Chapter 594. Lin Yuan didn't make a move immediately. Instead, he inquired about the other party's identity. The man was obviously stumped by the question. After a moment of silence, he reached out and took out a piece of white paper from his waist. After glancing at the contents, he cleared his throat and said, Lin Lixing, male, 31 years old, born, Lin Yuan. What the F***ck? Is this big brother so perfunctory? If he doesn't want to reveal his identity, he can just pretend to be aloof and continue to make a move. If not, he can just coldly say something like, damn, monster doesn't need to know who I am. Wouldn't that make him look pretentious? You took out a piece of paper with your identity and background and read it to me. Should I say you're stupid, or do you think I'm stupid? The man in front of him, who was suspected to be a Heaven Star Realm cultivator, continuously introduced himself with close to 2,000 words. He even told Lin Yuan what he liked to eat and what he disliked to eat. Instantly, Lin Yuan was filled with the desire to ridicule him. At this moment, the man put the piece of paper back into his waist with a solemn expression and said slowly, That's all. You already know who I am. Can you die now? Lin Yuan? She even felt a familiar BGM playing beside her. Little friend, do you have a lot of question marks? However, ridicule was just ridicule. At this moment, even if Lin Yuan wasn't completely awake and was a little confused by the other party, he could still tell that this man who called himself Lin Lixing was a strong enemy. Moreover, he was so strong that even he felt threatened. Although he might not be a match for you if you unleash your full strength, I don't suggest you kill him. Otherwise, you'll know what it means to be hunted down by powerhouses no matter where you go. Just as Lin Yuan planned to make the first move to gain the upper hand, the system, which was used to playing dead, actually took the initiative to show a line of words. You know him? Lin Yuan was slightly stunned. He was well aware of what kind of plaything the system was. This Lin Lixing could actually make the system give such an evaluation. Could it be that his parents were some kind of big shot? This possibility was not impossible. Although Lin Lixing claimed to be 31 years old, he looked like he was only in his 20s. Even if one's cultivation reached a certain level, one would be able to retain one's youthful appearance forever, but what was fixed was still the appearance at that time. In other words, no matter how old this Lin Lixing was, he would only be in his 20s when he cultivated to the realm of retaining his youthful appearance forever. The word genius wasn't enough to describe such an existence. He should be called a monster. Without a certain background and resources, it would not be easy to nurture such a monster. I don't know him, but I can feel the power of the laws on his body. To be precise, he's not just coming for you. Even I am his hunting target. Trust me, if you can't shake him off, just wait for him to harass you until one of you is completely dead. You're not an existence of this world. Anyone with a little bit of cultivation can see your roots. Although I and the Incuran have helped you cover up, you still can't hide from the supreme laws of this world. In the eyes of the laws, you're an incomparably dazzling existence. As long as you do something that interferes with the normal operation of this world, it will send such an existence to kill you. You should know that the Qinwu continent doesn't have the three realms of heaven, earth, and man. Behind the divine gate of this world are all Hongjuan's lackeys. Regardless of whether it's the cultivators of this world or the laws of this world, they are incomparably repelled from entering the Qinwu continent. Otherwise, why do you think those mighty people are willing to give up everything and spontaneously organize to guard the divine gate? The laws of this world affect those top-notch cultivators to ensure that everything is within the laws. However, there will always be some extraordinary people who will destroy the trajectory calculated by the laws. If the impact is small, the laws don't even have to show up to fix it. If the impact is large like yours, the laws will directly kill your existence. The system displayed again. Lin Yuan was silent for a moment before he gritted his teeth and said, Then don't wait for him to harass me. I'll King kill him now. Lin Yuan felt a ball of fire burning in his heart. What did he do? He didn't even know what he did. How did he affect the normal operation of this world? Were the laws of the Qinwu continent so overbearing? Was sleeping also against the law? Among the other hosts that I've nurtured, many of them have experienced situations where they were targeted by the laws of this world. Some of them fled when they saw that the situation was not good. They waited for the laws to slowly fix the loopholes before they came out again. They were still good men. There were also some who didn't listen to advice and insisted on fighting with the laws. The grass on their graves is probably as tall as you now. Let me give you a word of advice. A strong dragon cannot suppress a snake in its old haunts. The laws of this world don't welcome Hongjun, and similarly they don't welcome me either. It can't tolerate a transmigrator like you, especially one who has formed a relationship with me in the underworld at the same time. It seems like you have the intention of mending this world. If it were you, would you be able to endure it? The one that appeared in front of you today is only a carrier of the laws that was temporarily given a mission. If you insist on going against the laws, I can give you a typical example. You should have heard of the story of the Grand Magus Lucio, right? The system slowly displayed a line of words. Lin Yuan was speechless. If the system said that, then he would really be convinced. Those who had a little understanding of history would know that Lucio was actually an emperor who was not outstanding in politics or martial arts. The only thing he could boast about in his life was his almost heaven-defying luck. In a situation where the number of people, the support of the people, and the equipment were far inferior to Wang Mang's, he was able to turn the tables and overthrow Wang Mang's new dynasty, restoring the rule of the Great Han. In addition, Wang Mang was extremely biased towards the various reforms of Lin Yuan's previous life, so he was once jokingly called a transmigrator. In addition, his continuous battles with Lu Xiu, who was in existence with heaven-defying luck, was also jokingly called a transmigrator by the netizens of his previous life. If it was in his previous life, Lin Yuan might have treated these things as a joke. However, after he became a transmigrator, he felt that Wang Mang's treatment was very bad. Especially after he took control of the northern frontier and completed a series of reforms, he felt that he was extremely similar to Wang Mang. There were some things that were even more terrifying. Had Wang Mang been assassinated before? The answer was, of course, yes. After all, putting aside those jokes, a person who gave land to the commoners would definitely be on the opposite side of the aristocratic families. Even Lin Yuan, who had absolute power to suppress, had a hard time dealing with it, so how could Wang Mang have handled it with ease? So Wang Mang had also forcefully resisted the assassination of the laws and did not die, and thus created Lu Xiu, the child of the dimension. Chapter 595. Lin Yuan was silent for a moment, then said in a muffled voice, "Isn't it a little too late for me to escape now?" Seeing Lin Lixing pull out a black spear from who knows where, Lin Yuan felt his eyelids twitching crazily. The rules of a world could affect the will of countless living beings. Even someone as strong as Hong Jun was firmly rejected on the other side of the heavenly gate, unable to enter. Now, Lin Yuan was no different from a dead person in the eyes of the rules. But if he killed Lin Lixing, Lin Yuan's threat level would be infinitely magnified in the eyes of the rules. At that time, he would really become the child of destiny, and the foundation that he had painstakingly built would all go down the drain. As the most failed transmigrator senior, Wang Mang's name could be said to be illustrious. Lin Yuan did not wish to become a man on the same level as Wang Mang. Furthermore, even if he wanted to run, where could he run to? Regardless of whether it was the Stoneclaw Forest or the northern frontier, his foundation was right there. If he chose to give it up, it would be no different from the child of destiny that was created by the rules. Name, Lin Lixing. Status, God's blessing, carrier of the rules, realm. Talent, 1. 2. 3. Speed. Defense. Attack. Martial arts. Skills. Items. At this moment, the results of the Eye of God appeared in front of Lin Yuan. After a moment, Lin Yuan felt that there were as many question marks in his head as there were on Lin Lixing's stats panel. What the F***ck is this? After a scan, he knew the name that Lin Lixing had read out, and a status that he did not know what it meant. The rest were all question marks. This Eye of God special effect was probably bought at a high price, right? Lin Lixing casually waved the spear in his hand and said with a cold face, "Lin Yuan, you've disrupted the heavens time and time again, and you're still cultivating the power of misfortune. With an existence like you, the Qinwu continent will never have a day of peace." At this point, he raised his chin slightly and added, "I advise you to surrender so that you won't suffer any physical pain." By the time he finished speaking, the black spear in his hand had already been thrown out. In the blink of an eye, it had pierced through Lin Yuan's body. Lin Lixing was even a little doubtful that he had completed the attack on his target so easily. He lowered his head and looked at his own hands, then looked at the motionless Lin Yuan. He secretly pondered in his heart. Could it be that this guy had really surrendered without putting up a fight? Before Lin Lixing could confirm his point of view, Lin Yuan in front of him suddenly exploded, turning into specks of starlight and dissipating. At this moment, the doubt on Lin Lixing's face slowly dissipated. He suddenly turned his head to look ahead and growled, "Run? Let's see where you can run to." As the carrier of the rules, Lin Lixing could communicate with the rules at all times. He naturally knew that Lin Yuan was not dead, so he did not have time to worry about Lin Yuan's whereabouts. Lin Lixing once again took out a black spear, turned into a stream of light and rushed forward. After Lin Lixing was completely gone, the calm lake once again surged with waves. A black flood dragon's head slowly rose from the surface of the water. The black flood dragon's scales were still incomparably dry, as if it had not been soaked in the lake water at all. Lin Yuan sized up the other party's back that was getting further and further away and carefully asked, "This guy, was he really deceived? There was no free lunch in the world. If there was, then you would definitely be the main dish." In order to hide the detection power of the rules, Lin Yuan had asked the system to help him cover up, and the price was 1,500 attribute points. This was a huge sum of money to him in the past, but it was thrown into the sea just like that. He did not even hear a sound, but the effect seemed to be quite good. At least at this moment, Lin Lixing had no intention of turning back at all. It was obvious that he was following the feedback of the rules and going to catch Lin Yuan. There is no foolproof plan in the world. I only gave you a disguise. Although it can temporarily deceive the rules, it is not a long-term solution. For the time being, it's best that you don't show your power in front of others. Otherwise you might be blocked by Lin Lixing. After all, although the rules can't sense your existence, they can sense your existence through the feedback of other living beings. In other words, if you stay here for the rest of your life, I guarantee that the rules won't discover your existence. However, if you leave the nest and are discovered by the rules, then it won't be my problem anymore. Also, products made by the system are not refundable. The system showed another line of words, very much like an unscrupulous merchant. Lin Yuan was speechless. You don't have to worry about the rules playing tricks on you. Just like I said, both you and I will be restricted by the rules. Just like the heavenly court controlled by a certain human king in your previous life, there was a heavenly law that seemed to have countless loopholes. That was also a kind of rule, and not something that the Jade Emperor or Queen Mother could change. Even if it was unreasonable to sever one's emotions, it would not be easy to violate. Many people confuse the heavenly Tao with the rules, but in reality that is not the case. Let me give you an example that you can understand. The rules are in existence like a computer network, and the heavenly Tao is a computing AI. Through continuous learning, the AI may give birth to its own will, but there is no way to change the form of the computer itself. No matter how powerful the AI is, it will be completely dead once it is formatted. However, at the same time, the AI will be limited, and the computer itself will be limited by its own equipment. Therefore, the rules themselves have to abide by the rules. Just like this time, if you kill the carrier of the rules have many tricks to deal with you. However, you did not directly kill the carrier of the rules, so your danger rating did not rise. Even if it finds you next time, it can only use an existence like the carrier of the rules to assassinate you. The system's words made Lin Yuan ponder. According to what you said, the rules are the computer itself, and the heavenly Tao is the AI produced by the network's computing. Then wouldn't a transmigrator like me be a kind of virus? Lin Yuan asked with an ugly expression. Just like some harmless viruses that enter the computer will hardly attract attention, but harmful viruses will affect the operation of the computer and even cause the system to crash or become uncontrollable. In this way, whether it is the computer or the AI, they will find ways to kill this harmful virus. Now, in the eyes of the rules, you are this harmful virus. It will frantically try to eliminate you as a threat, but the firewall of the rules itself cannot be adjusted at will. As long as you do not break the current difficulty, it will not mention the next difficulty to you. That is why I suggest you run away. The system displayed again. Although he could not see the system's expression, Lin Yuan had a feeling that it was gloating. Chapter 596. Taking a deep breath, Lin Yuan tried his best to calm himself down. Other than being mentally exhausted, he needed to start brainstorming. What was the problem that caused the rules to raise his threat level and send out antivirus software to kill a virus like him? Was it a problem with the Northern Frontier's new laws and regulations that he came up with? Lin Yuan had his suspicions, but he could not be sure. After all, Wang Mang had taken this path and was targeted by the rules. If there are rules and restrictions, the strength of the antivirus software that appears for the first time will not be much higher than the virus. Judging from Wang Mang's means of subverting the rule of the Han dynasty, let alone an assassin, even if Jing Ku reincarnated or Gunye reincarnated, they would not be able to assassinate him. Therefore, the failure of the first antivirus was completely expected, and even the failure of several antivirus did not surprise Lin Yuan. Therefore, after the assassination failed, the next step was to create a child of destiny? What if the child of destiny failed? What would the next step be? Thinking about this, Lin Yuan felt like he was targeted by the rules, and it was not because of the Northern Frontier's reforms. After all, he had not been doing this for a day or two. If the rules were unhappy with him, they would have given him a warning a long time ago. Why would they wait until today? Or did something happen that caused the rules' power to be irreparable, causing the script to deviate from its control so the rules increased his threat level? Thinking about this, Lin Yuan felt like he had caught on to something. Late Xiuxing, the emperor who used the power of the aristocratic families to usurp the throne. If he was not mistaken, the rules had been dissatisfied with his actions at the northern frontier for a long time. Furthermore, they had been using the power of the rules to repair the situation. If everything went smoothly, Late Xiuxing would gain the upper hand in the upcoming war and slowly nibble away at him. When the northern frontier was completely defeated, Late Xiuxing would once again complete his unification, and the script would once again return to the hands of the rules. However, he was not the only variable that the rules had to face this time. The existence of the Sky Demon had turned Late Xiuxing, who was originally thought highly of by the rules, into a puppet emperor. Although he had managed to escape, he had managed to sneak into the northern frontier without anyone noticing. As a result, no matter how many trump cards Late Xiuxing had, as long as he was still in Lin Yuan's hands, he would never be able to cause any trouble. But the question was it because Late Xiuxing's willpower was so strong that the rules couldn't affect him, or was it because Late Xiuxing had calculated all of this would happen so he deliberately went to the northern frontier, and then used the rules to get rid of Lin Yuan? Then he waited for an opportunity to take over the northern frontier, and conspired to revive the Shenwu dynasty. No matter what the reason was, Late Xiuxing seemed to be extremely terrifying. At the same time, far away in the northern frontier, Late Xiuxing sneezed twice for no reason. Then he got up with a puzzled expression and closed the window. The northern frontier might be really strange. Some places in the south might have already started to snow, but on the northern frontier, other than the roads that had been cleared by people, there was still a thick layer of snow piled up everywhere. However, when one walked out of the door they wouldn't feel cold. However, that bone-piercing chill couldn't be concealed. Otherwise, how could a cultivator in the late stage of the Heavenly Dipper realm like him possibly sneezed? At his level of cultivation, he didn't dare to say that he was immune to all diseases, but he was usually full of vigor. A small illness like a cold was like a non-existent existence to cultivators. Knock, knock. Just as Late Xiuxing closed the window, someone knocked on the door. Getting up and opening the door, Late Xiuxing saw 1,000 household of the embroidered uniform guard wearing a white Kirin uniform standing in front of him. The 1,000 household of the embroidered uniform guard clasped his fists and said, "Your Majesty, we found Sherdong's corpse. We suspect that he was killed by you. Please come with us to cooperate with the investigation." Late Xiuxing looked at the embroidered uniform guard in front of him with a head full of confusion. He muttered in his heart. Could it be that this group of people was thinking of a way to plot against him? Although he had escaped for some distance, he didn't even cross the Wei River. He was still brought to the northern frontier by Yan Xingqi. He was under Yan Xingqi's supervision the entire time. How could a mere Heavenly Dipper realm cultivator, even if he was in the late stage of the Heavenly Dipper realm, face a void realm big shot like Yan Xingqi? Kill himself? How could that be? Not to mention that he didn't have the opportunity to do so when he was by Yan Xingqi's side. Even if he had the opportunity, why did he have to kill someone? Also, who was Sherdong? This name was a little unfamiliar. Seeing that Late Xiuxing didn't move, even though the embroidered uniform guard didn't flare up, his eyes revealed a look of impatience. He couldn't help but lower his voice and urge, "Your Majesty, please cooperate with us. After all, killing someone in the northern frontier's new law will be punished with capital punishment if there is no special reason. Even if there is a special reason, you will still have to serve hard labor. The specific circumstances will depend on the severity of the case." Late Xiuxing opened his mouth, but when the words reached his mouth he softly said, "Lead the way." He wasn't in existence like Jiao Xinghai. He was very clear about his current situation. If he didn't have the protection of the northern frontier, he might not even be able to survive a day under the pursuit of the Sky Demon. Not to mention that the other party seemed to be telling the truth. Even if the other party was plotting against him, he had to bite the bullet and jump into the hole. However, while he was sullen, Late Xiuxing also developed a bit of interest in the northern frontier's new law. This northern frontier's new law, as well as the new policies that Lin Yuan had pushed out, Late Xiuxing had carefully studied them all. Even though he admired them, he knew that if he didn't have the power to challenge the aristocratic families, even if he pushed it out, it would be useless. Instead, it would cause the aristocratic families and even the imperial family to be dissatisfied with him. The Shinwu dynasty's law was much stricter than the northern frontier's new law. However, to use a phrase from Lin Yuan's previous life to describe it, the punishment couldn't be inflicted on the scholarly officials. Those officials, tyrants, and aristocratic children all enjoyed certain privileges. Even if they broke the law, they could use compensation to reduce or even directly exempt themselves from the punishment. As for whether or not this compensation would be taken back in the future, that was something that everyone understood. However, it was completely different in the northern frontier. Just a simple sentence like, "The emperor is punished the same as the commoners," was something that Lei Qiuxing couldn't do. If the other party was plotting against him, then he would just treat it as if he was blind. However, if it wasn't against him and it was the truth, then it would be too interesting. Thinking up to here, Lei Qiuxing became more and more interested in the Black Jiao. He even wanted to immediately meet Lin Yuan. Chapter 597. Luo Su's face was gloomy as he squatted beside a corpse covered with a white cloth. Although he and Sherdong had not been enemies for long, they were familiar with each other. Thus, the moment he saw the corpse, he was certain that it was Sherdong himself. But that was where the problem lay. The secret passageway that Sherdong had secretly built had been thoroughly investigated by Luo Su. There were countless forks in the secret passageway. It seemed that all of them were safe paths, but there were only 3 paths that could be considered safe paths. Furthermore, the exits of these 3 paths were all guarded by the tiki of the embroidered uniform guards. The ones leading them were at least at the level of a Qianhu. With such a lineup, even the present Li Zhong had no possibility of escaping alive, let alone Sherdong, whose cultivation was lacking. However, none of the 3 ambushes had succeeded. Instead, Sherdong's corpse had been nailed to the main gate of the embroidered uniform guard's yamen without anyone noticing. The embroidered uniform guard who was on duty today had been scared out of his wits. After all, nailing a corpse to the door of the embroidered uniform guard's office was not something that an ordinary person could do. Sherdong had mysteriously disappeared into the tunnel, and there were no abnormalities at the 3 exits. This was enough to prove that the person who had killed Sherdong was not to be trifled with. It was even beyond the embroidered uniform guard's capabilities. At the same time, the other party's actions were a harsh slap to the embroidered uniform guard's face. Wasn't the embroidered uniform guard awesome? They monitored the northern frontier, and even the king of the northern frontier was no exception. Not only had their mission target been taken away under their noses, but the other party had also used extremely insulting means to nail the corpse to the door of the embroidered uniform guard's office. Although they did not know the identity of the other party, their actions were filled with thick malice. At this moment, the Qianhu of the embroidered uniform guard, wearing a Kirin uniform, led Lei Qiuxing to the embroidered uniform guard's office. The moment he saw the corpse, Lei Qiuxing frowned before Luo Su could speak. His eyes were filled with shock. When he had first heard of Sherdong's death, he had thought that the Imperial Secret Service had set him up, but now he had changed his mind. Sherdong's death was not tragic, but it was definitely not normal. All the bones in his body were twisted in a strange way. Other than his head, which was still in a normal position, there was not a single bone in his body that was intact. However, even in such a twisted state, Sherdong's body did not look strange. If one did not look carefully, they would think that it was no different from an ordinary corpse. There were not even any external injuries. Jade Pill Ghost Fist. Lei Qiuxing couldn't help but exclaim after looking at it for a moment. Jade Pill Ghost Fist, a mystic high-grade martial skill, was a secret skill unique to the divine martial Lei clan. It required a special technique to exert force. Once it was used, it would cause the opponent's internal injuries to be untreatable. In the case of Sherdong, there were not many martial skills that were as vicious and evil as the Jade Pill Ghost Fist. Moreover, looking at Sherdong's injuries, it was at least at the initial stage. This also meant that the killer not only had the cultivation method of the Jade Pill Ghost Fist, but also the supplementary prescription of the Lei clan's secret record. Without 10 years of hard work, one would not even be able to learn this martial skill. Only the Lei clan's descendants, who were originally the top generals of the Myriad Swords dynasty, would be able to learn it. In addition, this martial skill was vicious, not only to the enemy but also to oneself. Without the supplementary prescription to heal the injuries, one would have already been crippled before they could even learn the martial skill. In the past, this martial skill was a treasure in the eyes of the Lei clan. It was not easily taught to non-direct descendants. After many years of fighting, the older generation of Lei clan's descendants had either died or died. There were no more than 7 people who still grasped the cultivation method of the Jade Pill Ghost Fist, and very few of the Lei clan's descendants were able to learn it. At this point, among the Lei clan's descendants, the only ones who had grasped the Jade Pill Ghost Fist were Lei Qiuxing and Lei Qiuming. At present, Lei Qiuming was still in the south. Whether it was the Southern Rebel Army, the Evil Cult, or the Sky Demon Army, all of them were enough to annoy him. It was impossible for him to give up his foundation and come all the way to the northern frontier to kill people. Even if he had the leisure to do so, the embroidered uniform guards and the Demon the Arch Association were not there for nothing. No wonder, you all suspected me. Lei Qiuxing silently lowered his head. A bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He said, looking at this guy's dead body, even I suspect that I killed him. The saying that a martial skill was not easily taught was not just a saying. The Jade Pill Ghost Fist's manual had been burned after the Lei clan's descendants had completely mastered it. The Lei clan's generations of talents had been taught the martial skill orally by their elders. Even the supplementary medicine was slowly developed by the Lei clan over a long period of time. In the beginning, when the Lei clan's descendants cultivated the Jade Pill Ghost Fist, they were said to be invincible among their peers. However, the manual was too overbearing. Cultivating this martial skill consumed too much of one's body. Even a breakthrough in the cultivation realm could not prolong one's life. No matter how talented one was, it was very difficult for one to live past the age of 60 to cultivate the Jade Pill Ghost Fist. After repeated trial and error and research, the Lei clan's unique elixir, the Jade Pill, was created. The Jade Pill Ghost Fist in the past did not have the prefix Jade Pill. We naturally believe in your majesty. Luo Su slowly got up. His eyes, which were exposed outside the bandages, flashed with a bright light. He said in a low voice, however, Sherdong died at the hands of the Lei clan's unique martial skill. According to the investigation of the embroidered uniform guards, the only Lei Fan who entered the northern frontier was your majesty and Lei Fan. Lei Fan died long ago and now only your majesty is left. And this Sherdong. At this point Luo Su paused. He put on a smiling face and continued, this happened after your majesty came to the northern frontier. Your majesty should give us an explanation, right? Lei Qiuxing glanced at Luo Su from the corner of his eyes. He said indifferently, I have accompanied General Yan all the way to the north. Do you all think that I have the ability to hide from a Kongming cultivator and kill someone from afar, and then return to General Yan's side without anyone knowing? In our line of work we can encounter any kind of case. If we give up the investigation just because it is impossible, wouldn't the world laugh at the incompetence of the embroidered uniform guards? Let me make a bold assumption. For example, your majesty and Yan Xingqi conspired to kill the vice president of the Association of the Demon Emperor in the northern frontier, Sherdong. You can then create an alibi for yourself and deliberately divert our attention to other directions? Luo Su did not have the slightest intention of giving Lei Qiuxing any face. He said in a hateful tone, of course I am just making a bold assumption. I have no intention of making your majesty a scapegoat. Besides, there is no General Yan in the northern frontier. Yan Xingqi's adopted sons and daughters have just reported to the Northern Frontier Academy. It is not yet time for them to be conferred as Marquis. Yan Xingqi himself is also not a general in the Northern Frontier. Your Majesty, please be careful with your words. Chapter 598. Luo Su openly challenged Lei Qiuxing. This action not only shocked the surrounding Imperial Secret Guards, even Lei Qiuxing had a look of disbelief in his eyes. Even if the northern frontier was powerful now, it was still a vassal territory under the Shenwu dynasty. Under the instructions of Black Snake, they had conferred many positions that were not recognized by the Shenwu dynasty. After all, the northern frontier was their territory, and other than having to pay tribute to the Shenwu dynasty, it was still an independent kingdom. So Lei Qiuxing did not have any excuse to criticize the northern frontier. But Yan Xingqi's title was another matter. Although Yan Xingqi had lost to Lei Qiuxing in the past, and was sent to the northern frontier by Lei Qiuxing out of fear of his ability and prestige. But in name, Yan Xingqi was the guardian of the northern frontier, a second-grade general of the north. Although he did not have any real power, but in name he controlled all the armies in the northern frontier. Even if everyone knew that Yan Xingqi was a prisoner exiled to the northern frontier, they still had to give him some face. In all these years, there had not been any rumors of discord between Yan Xingqi and the northern frontier army. But in the northern frontier, how come Yan Xingqi did not even have the title of general? This was no longer a problem of Yan Xingqi's position in the northern frontier. This was the Northern Frontier Army openly slapping Lei Qiushing's face. You were conferred the title of general by Lei Qiushing? Sorry, the Northern Frontier does not recognize you. Luo Su was one of the survivors of the destruction of Zhanshan City, and the price he had paid for it was not small at all. He had narrowly escaped death under the frenzied attacks of countless demon beasts and barely managed to survive. However, he suddenly heard that the Xinwu dynasty did not have the slightest intention of using him again. In order to keep the truth of the destruction of Zhanshan City a secret, they had even ordered the 6 border cities to open up a blockade and kill the survivors of Zhanshan City. If not for Lei Fan having his own plans, he, Luo Su, would have long been a dead man. Under the tempering of the purgatory fire, Luo Su had long cultivated a vicious aura. In the past, Lin Yuan had suppressed it so it would occasionally flare up. Now that he saw Lei Qiushing who had caused him to fall to this point, Luo Su naturally could not suppress his temper. However, Lei Qiushing was, after all, an ambitious and ruthless person. His entire body exuded an aura of a dying tiger. Even though he knew that he was now under the eaves of the Northern Frontier, he did not want to lower his head. Or rather, he did not want to casually lower his head. Lei Qiushing narrowed his eyes slightly and sneered, "Does Commander Luo mean that this person must have been killed by me? If so, why did Commander Luo bring me here? You only need to announce that this person died at the hands of my Lei family's secret technique, and then clearly state that I am the only one in the Northern Frontier who knows this secret technique. Wouldn't that solve the problem?" At this point, Lei Qiushing laughed and said coldly, "Commander Luo, do you still have any unjust or strange cases in your hands that you cannot solve? Why don't you tell me all of them? I will agree to all of them." As soon as he finished speaking, the corner of Luo Su's mouth twitched twice, but he did not reply. The two of them just looked at each other like this. The atmosphere was inexplicably awkward, and there was a faint murderous aura. "Your Majesty, why are you so angry? In their line of work, isn't it important to make bold assumptions and carefully seek confirmation? If you don't have the courage, how can you sit in the position of commander of the embroidered uniform guards? Not to mention that your Majesty is now very suspicious. Even if your Majesty is not suspicious at all, is there anything wrong with Commander Luo suspecting your Majesty?" An ethereal voice suddenly sounded, breaking the silence between Luo Su and Lei Qiushing as they looked at each other. After a pause, the voice said again, "Commander Luo is only voicing his own doubts. If your Majesty is truly innocent, why are you not willing to cooperate with Commander Luo's investigation and use evidence to clear yourself of suspicion? Showing such a strong attitude in front of others, could it be that you have a guilty conscience?" When the second voice fell, everyone had already turned their heads to look in the direction of the voice. Even though Lei Qiushing was now at the end of his road, he was still the true ruler of the Xinwu dynasty. Even if Luo Su had argued with Lei Qiushing, he only dared to say that he was suspicious. However, this person had spoken so bluntly, as if he did not care about Lei Qiushing's face at all. Who on earth was this divine being, to actually have such courage? Lei Qiushing also turned his head and happened to see a man in black whose skin was so pale that it appeared sickly green. There was not a single trace of blood on his body as he strolled over. The outline of his face was as if it had been carved by a knife. His facial features could not be considered exquisite and could barely be considered delicate. He was not much more outstanding than an ordinary person. The only difference was that this person's eyes were completely black, without any white in them. More importantly, there were no signs of life on this person's body at all, as if he was a walking corpse. Even his realm was concealed extremely well by the other party, making it impossible to see through his depth. However, when Lei Qiushing and the black-clothed man looked at each other, he actually faintly felt a fatal threat. Only the vassal kings of the Xinwu dynasty are qualified to wear an official robe. You actually dare to wear an official robe? Lei Qiushing still squinted his eyes, looked up and down at the man in black and clicked his tongue. In ancient times, demonic beasts were rampant, and countless humans relied on a certain great demon to survive. Whether it was blood sacrifices or tributes, they could not be less than the great demon who protected the clan. Even if they could not survive, it was the same. Because of the protection of the great demon, at most the clan would have a hard time, but without the protection of the great demon, humans were just delicious blood food in the Tianwu continent where demonic beasts were everywhere. Great demons were naturally divided into ranks. Even demonic beasts of the same realm were divided into strong and weak bloodlines, just like how a flood snake could never disobey a real dragon. If the great demon who protected a clan was tyrannical, the clan's life would naturally be better. Although demonic beasts were everywhere in that era, the Dragon Clan was still the existence at the top of the food chain. The strength of a clan protected by the Dragon Clan was extremely fast, and could easily conquer other clans, complete the unification of a certain area, and become in existence like a king or an emperor. Although today's humans did not need the protection of the great demons, and instead the demonic beast's living space was squeezed to the Hungduan mountain range, some customs of the ancient times were still passed down. According to the rank of the official, the uniforms would be embroidered with different demonic beasts. Not to mention other things, the clan kings who had the protection of the Dragon Clan liked to call themselves the Dragon Sons, so the king's uniforms were always embroidered with dragon patterns. Until now, only the emperor of a dynasty was qualified to wear an official robe. The uniforms of the royal family were embroidered with python patterns, and some powerful vassal kings were also able to wear official robes. Of course, there were taboos on the uniforms. If your status was not high enough, you could embroider plum blossoms, orchid, bamboo, chrysanthemum, breeze and moon on your clothes. However, if you were to learn from the civil and military officials and embroider demonic beasts, you would be convicted of rebellion. If you were to embroider a python and a dragon, it would be a serious crime. Once investigated, your family would be exterminated. Chapter 599. I am the great black water dragon king, the true god of the northern frontier. What's wrong with wearing a dragon robe? The black-clothed man leaned forward slightly, his gaze sweeping across Lei Qiuxing's face. With a mocking look, he said, "A human emperor wearing a dragon robe is just putting gold on his face. This king is wearing a dragon robe only to show off his status." This black robe was indeed embroidered with dragon patterns, and there was no intention of hiding it. The black silk was embroidered with dragon patterns with golden thread. Just a cursory glance and one could feel the luxurious aura. The dragon patterns were very obvious. As long as one was not blind, one would be able to recognize that it was a dragon. Furthermore, it was a dragon of different postures. Flying dragon, coiling dragon, horned dragon, cloud dragon, river dragon, etc., but they were all embroidered throughout the black robe. To put it bluntly, Lei Qiuxing had never worn a robe like this before. "You are Lin Yuan?" Lei Qiuxing was a little confused. Wasn't the black Jiao supposed to be a demonic beast? The black-clothed man in front of him looked tall and thin, at most 26 or 27 years old. His aura was concealed very well, so his cultivation must be extraordinary. But how was the black-clothed man related to a demonic beast? Lei Qiuxing did not dare to say that he had seen everything, but he had never heard of a demonic beast that could walk the world in human form. The black-clothed man who called himself Black Water Dragon King pursed his lips slightly and said with a smile, "Whether this king is Lin Yuan or not has nothing to do with you. His Majesty has not yet cleared himself of the suspicion of being a murderer. According to the laws of the northern frontier, a murderer must pay with his life. Moreover, the person who died was one of the important officials of the northern frontier. Sherdong knew many secrets and died so miserably. It is difficult to guarantee that he was not tortured. If His Majesty cannot prove that Sherdong was not killed by you, I am afraid that His Majesty will have to suffer a little." The black-clothed man was indeed Lin Yuan. However, it wasn't his actual body, but a puppet created by the Northern Frontier's Ministry of Works. Whether it was the skin or the fillings, they were all made of expensive materials, almost no different from a real person. However, if one were to come into contact with it, they would find that there was no temperature to speak of. Moreover, the lack of life aura was not because it had restrained its aura, but because the essence of this puppet was still made of iron and wood. There was no possibility of it giving birth to life. Lin Yuan's main body was still stuck in the nest. He was only controlling this puppet body with a secret technique. After all, Lin Lixing was still watching. If he jumped out now, he would definitely not end up well. Not to mention killing Lin Lixing, he couldn't even seriously injure or cripple him. There was no guarantee that the rules would have some tricks up their sleeves. However, the Ministry of Works, whose annual research budget was close to 1/3 of the Northern Frontier's income, did not disappoint Lin Yuan. The materials used in this puppet were all extraordinary and had characteristics similar to memory metal. Even if it was damaged, it would slowly recover with the passage of time. It was invulnerable to swords, spears, water, and fire. Unless it was smashed by an unstoppable force, it would be impossible to directly destroy this puppet. Of course, it only sounded good. This puppet body did not have the terrifying quality of Lin Yuan's main body. At most, it could display 20% of Lin Yuan's strength. If it was near Lin Yuan's main body or the Black Water Dragon King Temple, it could display 40% of its strength. However, it could only use various skills and demonic energy. Moreover, there was a limit to the damage it could bear. A Void Realm expert only needed to attack once to immediately destroy this puppet body. In addition, the heart of this puppet body was a completely different world. It could completely accommodate Lin Yuan's main body. In this state, this puppet could also display 40% of Lin Yuan's strength. Moreover, once the puppet was damaged, Lin Yuan could reveal his main body at any time to fight the opponent. However, Lin Yuan did not have any intention of entering the puppet's heart. The carrier of the rules, Lin Lixing, was still a sharp knife hanging over his head. If the puppet body was targeted, it would definitely not be able to defeat an existence like Lin Lixing. It might not even have the chance to escape. When the puppet was destroyed, would he come out or not? In addition, Lin Yuan was also reluctant to destroy this puppet body. After all, in order to create this puppet carrier, almost half of the various rare treasures in the northern frontier had been emptied. All kinds of precious metals and wood were also gone. It was not easy to gather together. If it was destroyed by Lin Lixing in a few days, he could not afford to repair a second one in a short period of time. If you say it like that, it is reasonable. Lei Qiuxing nodded slightly and did not argue with Lin Yuan about his human form. Taking a deep breath, Lei Qiuxing slowly turned around and his gaze fell on Luo Su. He said in a deep voice, "Commander Luo, I am now taking refuge in the northern frontier. If there is anything I can do to help, I will do my best to help." Luo Su was silent for a moment before he slowly nodded and said indifferently, "Of course." Although he did not have a good impression of Lei Qiuxing, he was very familiar with Lin Yuan. When the puppet body appeared, he had already smelled the scent of Lin Yuan. In his heart, he was certain that even if the black-robed man was not Lin Yuan, he should be someone very close to Lin Yuan. Now that the other party had spoken, as long as Lin Yuan himself did not stand out to oppose, it should be Lin Yuan's idea. Under such circumstances, he naturally would not make things difficult for Lei Qiuxing like a person with cerebral palsy. Moreover, the black-robed man was right. Sherdong's death was really too tragic. It was hard to guarantee that he had not been forced to confess before his death. It should be known that the Association of the Demon Emperor also had the support of ordinary cultivators and common people in the northern frontier. The secrets they could find were definitely not small. If they casually revealed some, it would be enough to make the civil and military officials in the northern frontier suffer. Finding out who was the murderer of Sherdong was the top priority. As for Lei Qiuxing, there would be plenty of opportunities to deal with him in the future. Moreover, Luo Su only resented Lei Qiuxing to death. His previous outburst was also a venting of his own misfortune. But for Sherdong's murderer, Luo Su truly resented him. After all, the other party's casual actions had directly swept away the prestige that Luo Su had built up with Li Zhong to the ground, and even ruthlessly stepped on it twice. The hatred of one's father's murderer could not be greater than this. I still have some things to talk about with His Majesty. Commander Luo, can you give us a quiet place? Lin Yuan cupped his hands at Luo Su. His expression did not change and his pure black eyes fell on Luo Su's face. Luo Su's heart suddenly sank. He nodded slightly and said, "In that case, Dragon King and His Majesty, please come to my office. There are no other people who dare to come near. The office has also set up a Dharma array to isolate spies. The contents of your conversation will not be leaked." Lin Yuan nodded slightly. He did not intend to be courteous and walked directly to the yamen of the embroidered uniform guard. After all, he was the one who had built up the embroidered uniform guard. He was very clear about the layout of the yamen, the open and hidden sentries, and the overall strength of the yamen. Chapter 600. Lei Qiuxing pondered for a moment and followed behind Lin Yuan without saying a word. After all, he had been an emperor for decades and had mastered the skill of reading people's body language. Although he did not know why, he could clearly feel that Luo Su was hostile towards him. However, this young man who claimed to be the Black Water Dragon King of the northern frontier did not have any hostility towards him. Moreover, from Luo Su's words and actions, it seemed to confirm the identity of the black-clothed man. Even if this guy was not Lin Yuan, he was still Lin Yuan's loyal follower. The two walked into Luo Su's office one after another. Lin Yuan waved his right hand gently. Demonic energy surged out and immediately activated the array in the office. At this moment, Lin Yuan slowly turned around and sat on Luo Su's chair. Assuming the posture of a master, he gently raised his hand towards Lei Qiuxing. "I have no ill intentions towards you. Otherwise, you would not have been able to reach the northern frontier. No need to be restrained, please take a seat." Lei Qiuxing nodded slightly. His right hand clenched and his aura burst out. He pulled a chair over and sat down. Then he looked at Lin Yuan across Luo Su's desk. Looking at Lin Yuan's pitch-black eyes, Lei Qiuxing's eyes were obviously filled with fear. Even if it was a puppet, it was still a puppet with Lin Yuan's skill. The dragon's aura that was passively emitted was not something a mere Heaven Star border realm could resist. If this was the golden imperial palace of the Xinwu dynasty, Lei Qiuxing would not be at a disadvantage with the protection of the country's fate. Unfortunately, this was not the case. First of all, you don't have to doubt my identity. I am indeed the Black Water Dragon King Lin Yuan, and I am indeed a demonic beast. As for why I appear in front of you in the form of a human, it has nothing to do with you. You don't have to delve into it. Because again, I have no ill intentions towards you. Oh, I forgot to introduce you. Luo Su was originally the army commander of the mountain-blocking city's garrison army. He could be considered a veteran general of the northern frontier. His strength was not bad, but his art of war was not much. Thus, I kept him behind and formed the current embroidered uniform guards. At the same time, he's also the only survivor after the destruction of Zhongshan City. After the destruction of Zhongshan City, the Xinwu dynasty did not take any rescue measures. Instead, they ordered the remaining 6 border cities to do their best to kill the survivors of Zhongshan City. You should know that Luo Su wasn't the only survivor back then. It was only after your order reached the northern frontier that he became the only survivor. Therefore, I hope you can understand his hostility towards you. Lin Yuan went straight to the point, further expressing his goodwill. Lei Qiuxing nodded thoughtfully and said with a smile, "If that's the case, it's reasonable for him to be hostile towards me. After all, after the destruction of his hometown, he did not feel the slightest bit of warmth from his master. Instead, he learned that he was going to die. If it were me, I would also be resentful." After echoing Lin Yuan's words, Lei Qiuxing put on a calm look. Obviously, he did not take the initiative to speak. He knew very well that Lin Yuan's personality was similar to his. Although he always hit unpredictable cards, he was not the kind of person who liked to mystify things. Therefore, he believed that Lin Yuan must have something important to tell him by calling him here alone. It was not simply to explain why Luo Su would argue with him. After all, anyone with discerning eyes could see that the Xinwu dynasty was finished. Even if he, the emperor, did not die, he would only end up in a situation similar to Qiu Xinghai. It was just that Qiu Xinghai chose to hide in the Hengduan Mountains, while he came to the northern frontier alone and tried to join forces with Lin Yuan to destroy the Sky Demon army. Regardless of whether he succeeded or not, he did not avoid his failure. The civil and military officials of the northern frontier did not give him face, but Lin Yuan did not need to give him face. Whether he could leave the northern frontier alive was still unknown. Why should he listen to this explanation? Could it be that he would have a chance to take revenge on Luo Su for what he did today? Alright then, I'll get straight to the point. It was not a coincidence that I came to the embroidered uniform guard office. When I went to the northern frontier, I did not find your majesty. After asking around, I specially came to the embroidered uniform guard office. I don't mean to humiliate you, but I have to say that you have failed miserably in dealing with the Sky Demon. I don't believe that as the emperor of a country, you do not know what the general trend is. The top cultivators of the Tianwu continent are fighting against the foreign races, but that does not mean that they do not have any influence at all. Believe me, if it was not inconvenient for them to make a move, they would have done it themselves. In less than half a month, they would be able to wipe the Xinwu dynasty off the map of the Tianwu continent. There is no need for them to gather the 4 armies to besiege the Xinwu dynasty. From a certain point of view, the leaders of those top powers do not wish for the current situation to change. Whether it is me or the Sky Demon, in their eyes, we are not as trustworthy as you. I have only recently thought it through. The so-called alliance of the 4 great powers is just to force you to take a stand. If you had exposed the existence of the Sky Demon and were willing to take the initiative to help them get rid of the Sky Demon, the northern frontier would have been wiped out by their attacks. The current situation would not have existed. However, those top cultivators gave you a chance to choose, but you resolutely filled in the wrong answer. Lin Yuan shrugged and said with a mocking expression, "I don't know where your confidence comes from, but looking at today's results, the decision you made back then was like the Creator sprinkling wisdom all over the world, and only you opened the umbrella." In the face of Lin Yuan's ridicule, Lei Qiuxing's rock skin twitched slightly, but he did not explode. After all, Lin Yuan was speaking the truth. The calculations that he was so proud of were not worth mentioning in the eyes of those top cultivators. He did not even understand why the 4 great powers had started strong but ended weak. They clearly had the ability to destroy the Shenwu dynasty if they joined forces, but they slowly pushed forward. Instead, they forced the empire into chaos and gave Lin Yuan, Lei Qiuming, and the other ambitious people a chance to rise. Now that Lin Yuan had said it, he realized that those people had indeed given him many chances, but he had chosen to cooperate with the Sky Demon every time to fight against the Heavenly Gate Guardians. As a result, he had lost everything today. You and I are both gamblers. Since we are on the gambling table, we should be mentally prepared to lose everything. Do you think that the banker is hinting that you have bet on the wrong thing just because he opened the cup slowly? The principle of betting and leaving is applicable everywhere. I can be sure that even if I had realized it back then, my ending would not have been much better than now. After all, I already had a record, didn't I? A bitter smile hung on Lei Qiushing's face as he said bitterly, "You're just giving advice in hindsight by saying all this now. Why don't you tell me why you called me over?" Chapter 601. You're right. Once you're on the gambling table, you should be prepared to lose everything. Lin Yuan nodded slightly, agreeing with Lei Qiushing's words. Before he finished speaking, Lin Yuan got up and pressed his upper body on the table. His hands were propped up on the table, and his face was almost touching Lei Qiushing's. In the next moment, a low, hoarse and magnetic voice that sounded like the whisper of a devil sounded. "Do you want to gamble again, Lei Qiushing?" Lei Qiushing's face was visibly stunned. Whether Lin Yuan was telling the truth or not was something that could not be verified. The only thing that was correct was that he was indeed a gambler, and he had already lost this game. As for Lin Yuan's other words, Lei Qiushing was completely at a loss. Did he still have a bargaining chip in his hand? Of course he did. The hidden Shin Lin Jun was Lei Qiushing's biggest bargaining chip. Unfortunately, this knife could only be used once. Regardless of whether this knife could kill the Sky Demon or cause the northern frontier to perish together with the Sky Demon, this knife could not be unsheathed a second time. Right now, what right did he have to gamble again? Power. Absolute power. Lin Yuan slowly clenched his fists, and the smile on his face was somewhat sinister. He said, "The reason you lost was because you were weak. Whether it was the Elysium Guardian or the Sky Demon, they were all existences that you could not contend against. If you were willing to be an obedient lamb, they would have slowly taken away your wool. Unfortunately, you were unwilling, which led to today's situation." Lei Qiushing? Lei Qiushing's expression became more and more confused. He knew every word that Lin Yuan said, and he also knew the meaning of these sentences. However, after listening to Lin Yuan, he could not understand Lin Yuan's train of thought. After a while, Lei Qiushing stretched out his hand and knocked on the table. He directly leaned back and said with a smile that was not a smile, "The great black water dragon king, the righteous god of the northern frontier, also wants to use the evil cult's brainwashing method to deal with me? In the end, you're just a little monster at the Mountain Lord realm. If we really fight, you might not be able to win against me." The meaning behind his words was very simple. He agreed with Lin Yuan's words. The reason he had fallen to his current situation was indeed because he was not strong enough. If he had enough strength to challenge the Elysium protectors, even if he did not have any background, the Shenwu dynasty could be like the current situation of the northern frontier. Maintaining a cooperative relationship with the Elysium protectors was naturally much more cost-effective than simply paying tribute. He might even be able to exchange for a technique that could truly allow him to break through the Void Realm. However, while agreeing with this statement, Lei Qiushing also expressed his doubts about Lin Yuan's ability. This was because those evil cultists liked to use this method to trick ordinary people. They used secret techniques to squeeze out the potential of ordinary people, turning them into existences that ordinary martial artists or low-level cultivators could not match. They also threatened to say that they represented God's bestowment of power. However, in the end, this was just a scam. Those who had their potential stimulated could not live for more than 7 days at most. After that, the evil cultists would dispose of their corpses and fabricate lies that they had gone to serve God, or that they had been sent to other places by the church. Now, Lin Yuan's words clearly had the intention of leaning towards the evil cultists. In the end, Lin Yuan might not even be stronger than him. If Lin Yuan said that he could bestow him with power, he would not believe it even if he was beaten to death. Don't be in a hurry to reject me. You should know that there's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. The evil cultists might be able to trick ordinary people who haven't studied much, but anyone with a bit of knowledge would not believe them. However, you and I are different. You should know very well that as long as you give enough, you will be able to obtain a corresponding return. Many cultivators like to purchase spiritual items to aid in their cultivation. This is something that everyone knows. You can use money to exchange for large amounts of spiritual items here. Similarly, you can use other things that I am interested in to exchange for corresponding things. Lin Yuan returned to his seat, the evil expression on his face becoming more and more stern. A deal? Lei Qiuxing slowly lowered his head. His eyes flashed with a bright light as he pondered. He was not a fool who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth, but Lin Yuan's strangeness was something that he could not imagine. If it was him, it would be impossible for him to create the Demon the Arch Association, and it would be even more impossible for him to obtain control of the northern frontier. Furthermore, he was playing with fire. He suppressed the aristocratic family groups in the northern frontier, split his subordinates into different factions, and punished each other. In Lei Qiuxing's eyes, all of Lin Yuan's actions were playing with fire. However, not only did Lin Yuan not let the flames in his palms go out of control, he became stronger and stronger, and his appetite grew bigger and bigger. Even the guardians of the Heavenly Gate, who were the peak existences in the Qianwu continent, did not gain any benefits from Lin Yuan. In the end, both parties used a cooperative relationship to finalize various treaties. Although it seemed to be disadvantageous to Lin Yuan, it was enough to make Lei Qiuxing extremely envious. I have money. How much power can you sell to me? The bright light in Lei Qiuxing's eyes slowly dissipated as he probed. Lin Yuan shook his head very indifferently and said expressionlessly, money cannot exchange for power. If you must pay, I can make the decision to give you a 30% discount to buy a large amount of spiritual items. If you feel that these items can help you quickly break through, or even allow you to break through the threshold of the void realm and break through to a higher realm, I have no objections. You don't want money? Lei Qiuxing was slightly startled, but he slowly spread out his hands and said, if you want money, food, or resources, I have buried many things in the Shenwu dynasty. As long as you ask, I can do all I can to satisfy you. However, if you don't want money, do you see anything else on my body that I can exchange with you? Of course. Lin Yuan nodded slightly. His face was still expressionless as he said, your fate, lifespan, treasures, they can all be exchanged. If you still can't bear to part with these things, you can also choose to use your limbs, organs, 5 senses, and other things to exchange. This? Lei Qiuxing was speechless for a moment. What the hell was this? Why was this Black Jiao more of a heretic than a heretic? The cultists would only perform blood sacrifices during the grand festivals of the so-called gods, and the sacrifices were usually some virgin boys or girls. It was fine if they sacrificed whole to the evil gods, but it was rare for them to be bloody. Why was it that when it came to Lin Yuan he could use his limbs, organs, 5 senses and other things to exchange for power? As for fate, lifespan and other things, they were even more illusory. Cultivators had long lives, but the damage caused by cultivation techniques and martial techniques were different. Every cultivator's lifespan was also different. Some Heaven Star Border Realm cultivators didn't live past 60 years, but there were also Heaven Star Border Realm cultivators who were more than 1,000 years old who were still alive and kicking. Chapter 602. Among these crazy proposals, the only one that seemed reasonable was to use treasures to exchange for power. After deliberating for a moment, Lei Qiuxing held his right wrist and gently pulled out a sheathless heavy sword. The sword was 1.3 meters long, 5 fingers wide and had 5 sharp edges. It didn't look very beautiful, but it had an artistic conception of great craftsmanship. As soon as the sword appeared, cold air overflowed, almost instantly lowering the temperature in the office by more than 10 degrees. This sword is called Myriad View. It was my favorite weapon when I was young. It has killed more than 10,000 people, not counting demons. It can suppress evil spirits. Lei Qiuxing held the heavy sword with one hand, his face full of sighs. Lin Yuan tilted his head slightly, staring coldly at the heavy sword in Lei Qiuxing's hand, and activated the Eye of God. Name, Myriad View Forger. Lei Kuang Rating, B+. Characteristic 1, Blood Fiend Effect. This sword is a murderous weapon. When wearing this sword, activates the passive skill Ferocious Might, 100% intimidating cowardly people, making them not dare to have any hostility towards you. Characteristic 2, Soul Entanglement Effect. This sword has killed countless creatures. Under the entanglement of resentment, it is incomparably heavy. It can't be used by people without divine power. For every creature killed, the sword's weight increases by 1 gene, current weight, 3,150 gene plus 21,098 gene. Looking at the system's introduction, Lin Yuan's eyelids twitched slightly. This was the emperor of a country? Even if he was in such dire straits, any random item he took out was a good thing. Although this sword was useless to Lin Yuan, after all, the Blood Fiend's characteristic overlapped with the dragon's might, and the effect was far inferior to the dragon's might that he could freely control. However, the soul entanglement's effect made Lin Yuan extremely envious. No matter where it was, things with growth potential were absolutely precious. Just based on this characteristic, a rating of B+ was too low, but saying that it could be rated A was a bit of a stretch. For every creature killed, the sword's weight increased by 1 gene. Now, the sword's net weight was 24,248 gene. It sounded frightening, but looking at how Lei Qiuxing held it with one hand, it was clear that this weight wasn't considered heavy for Qianwu continent's cultivators. If Lin Yuan used the sea-suppressing tail in the water, it would have a strength of 1,000,000 gene. Wan Jing's sword couldn't even break his scales. And this weight wasn't just the attack power, but the weight of the sword itself. If he didn't have the strength to wield the sword, what was the point? Lei Qiuxing looked at Lin Yuan in front of him, and his slender brows slowly furrowed. 2 golden lines lit up in his originally pitch-black pupils, as if they were the pupils of his eyes. Just looking at it was already strange enough. What made Lei Qiuxing even more shocked was that when he looked directly at the 2 golden lines, he actually felt a kind of fear. It was as if an ant crawling on the ground raised its head and saw a god that ruled over everything. Very quickly, the golden lines in Lin Yuan's eyes dimmed until they were completely extinguished. At this time Lin Yuan let out a breath of turbid air and said in a low voice, "It's a good sword, but this sword can only be exchanged for 1 dendrobium at most." After the golden lines disappeared, Lei Qiuxing's heart palpitating feeling disappeared. He forced himself to say, "Let's exchange for it and see." Although he didn't know what 1 dendrobium meant by Lin Yuan's words, based on Lin Yuan's mysterious state when he opened his eyes just now, Lei Qiuxing's previous words, which sounded like crazy to him, had a certain degree of credibility. As soon as he finished speaking, Lei Qiuxing felt the weight of Wan Jing in his hand lighten. Then, a gust of evil wind came out of nowhere and gently brushed past Wan Jing's body. Before Lei Qiuxing could feel anything, Wan Jing turned into fine powder and scattered with the wind. In the blink of an eye, not even the fine powder could be seen. At the same time Lin Yuan's forehead lit up, and a green light swept out. Just as Lei Qiuxing was about to dodge, the green light had already sunk into his forehead. Its speed was faster than he imagined. He was hit almost as soon as he saw the green light leave Lin Yuan's forehead. In the next moment, Lei Qiuxing suddenly opened his eyes. The light in his eyes disappeared in a flash, and he let out a long breath of turbid air. The Dragon King's methods are truly unfathomable. Just this green light is actually worth 3 months of my bitter cultivation. As long as your majesty is satisfied. Lin Yuan nodded slightly. He didn't show any joy or sorrow on his face, but he was slightly shocked inside. Lei Qiuxing's Wanjing sword had been traded to Lin Yuan, the second-hand seller. Although there was no proper ceremony or sacrificial speech, it only made the return of incense points less. Moreover, Lei Qiuxing wasn't his believer, so this return was equivalent to a discount. However, Lin Yuan didn't see any disappointment on Lei Qiuxing's face. On the contrary, he seemed to be quite satisfied with this profit. Name, Lin Yuan. Title, Blackwater Dragon King. Position, Northern Frontier Righteous God Territory, Shenwu Dynasty, Northern Frontier Believer, 0 incense points. 2 Lin Yuan's eyelids twitched as he glanced at his incense points. Looking at the pitiful 2 points of incense points he had left. Although he didn't know the exact formula for the conversion, nor did he know what these 2 points of incense points could do, he still cursed the black-hearted system in his heart. However, just like the employees of a bank, even if the money didn't belong to them, they still had to pass through it. Once the money was in their hands, they wouldn't know the exact number if they didn't look carefully. However, from the denomination and thickness, they could roughly guess the amount. After the Wanjing sword was used as a sacrifice to the heavens, Lin Yuan was very clear that there were at least 20 points of incense points. As for how much Lei Qiuxing received, he couldn't see the exact number. However, with the 2 points he received, it was about 1/3. The remaining 2/3 were all swallowed by the system. The Wanjing sword didn't disappear directly either. Lin Yuan clearly saw that the Wanjing sword refreshed in the war treasury, and then it was taken off the shelves. Obviously, it was bought by another system's host. Although this didn't happen often, the system didn't hide the fact that Lin Yuan wasn't the only host. If Lin Yuan didn't have enough war points on hand, he basically didn't have any hope of getting anything good from the war treasury. By the time he saved up enough money, he might have already bought it. System, what is this minister position? How come I didn't see it when the incense points were first released? What did you update behind my back again? Lin Yuan's expression didn't change, but he silently asked in his heart with an expression of concern. Any changes to the system would be earth-shattering for a host like him. If he could grasp some information, he could further increase his growth rate or avoid some unnecessary losses. If he didn't understand, he could ask. There was nothing embarrassing about it. Chapter 603. The title of minister is the authority of a deity, such as water god or fire god. However, your title is Blackwater Dragon King, or you would be called the righteous god of the northern frontier. The title of righteous god means that you are the leader of the northern frontier pantheon, and all divine authority belongs to you. As long as you are willing and pay enough incense, you can change some simple rules of the northern frontier, or affect the weather or affect the people of the northern frontier. Of course, according to your different wishes, you will have to pay different amounts of incense. From a certain point of view, with the title of righteous god of the northern frontier, you are already the one who sets the rules. For example, the northern frontier is under your jurisdiction, and as long as you want, you can make the northern frontier unable to light up, have no 4 seasons, and be shrouded in snow all year round. Of course, the amount of incense required to set such rules is quite terrifying. Basically, it is when a deity is dissatisfied with the believers under their jurisdiction, and intends to purge their own territory, return everything to zero, and start all over again. Correspondingly, you can also use incense to create races, just like how some deities have their own spawns. You can also bestow them with all talents, but the prerequisite is that the creatures must have a fatal weakness and you can afford the incense. The system slowly displayed its explanation to Lin Yuan. It also gave Lin Yuan a general understanding of his title as the righteous god of the northern frontier. It was similar to the title of Jade Emperor or King of Gods, but although the essence was the same, it was not just a little bit weaker when called spawns? What's the difference between them and the creatures you created? Lin Yuan's main body narrowed his eyes slightly and took the initiative to ask. In essence, there is no difference. They are all creatures in the myriad of worlds. For example, although the monsters in the prehistoric era had a long lifespan and powerful strength, their reproductive ability was extremely low. They might even gradually die out with the passage of time. There is also the human race created by Nuwa. They do not have powerful strength or long lifespan, but they have an incomparably powerful learning ability. This is also the reason why humans are at the top of the food chain in countless worlds, and it is almost impossible for them to die out with time. Of course, the unparalleled creativity, wisdom, and comprehension of humans will also lead to their demise. Just like the world in your previous life that was located in the middle of the sea of misery, countless powerful races have already perished. Humans have gradually lost their respect for nature. They have created countless weapons that they cannot bear the cost of. If one day they trigger those weapons, the entire world will be destroyed without the need for the gods to cleanse it. However, if you want to create spawns, there is no way for them to form combat strength in a short period of time. This is because the reproduction and growth of a race will always take a long time. The more powerful the race, the more this is the case. At the same time, spawns are naturally devout believers. The more of them there are, the more incense power they can provide you. The system sent lines of words into Lin Yuan's sea of consciousness, as if a patient elder was guiding the younger generation of his family. Not necessarily. The eyes of Lin Yuan's main body lit up as a bold idea suddenly appeared in the depths of his heart. When the system said that the spawns would not be able to form combat strength in a short period of time, Lin Yuan suddenly thought of a game in his previous life. At the same time, he also thought of a race that was notorious in the endless starry sky and the myriad of worlds, the Zerg. Unparalleled reproductive ability so dense that it made people despair, and countless mutations that contained countless possibilities. Although the interstellar Zerg's physical body was weak, and ordinary firearms could cause fatal damage to them, their reproductive ability was many times faster than the speed at which humans produced bullets. Faced with such a race, any civilization would only end up being eaten alive. The cultivators and monsters on the Tianwu continent were indeed very strong, but there was a limit to this strength. A desolate demon realm beast king could easily slaughter tens of millions of Zerg, but what if there were hundreds of millions, billions, or tens of billions of Zerg? Moreover, the larger the base, the faster the reproduction. However, how long would it take for a powerhouse to be born? Killing a desolate demon realm existence with hundreds of millions of Zerg might not sound like a good deal, But if it was done, Lin Yuan could guarantee that even the Hengduan Mountains would not be able to last 100 years under such an attack, let alone the dynasties whose individual strength was far inferior to the Hengduan Mountains. Others might not be able to understand Lin Yuan's thoughts, but the system, which had also stayed on Earth for many years, quickly realized what Lin Yuan was referring to. Kid, I advise you to put away those dangerous thoughts. First of all, you're not qualified to enter the Sea of Misery right now, nor are you qualified to set foot in other worlds. The interstellar Zerg you created can indeed clean up the Tianwu continent within 100 years, but the Zerg's thinking is rather simple. Such a species is not qualified to provide incense power. Therefore, very soon, you and your Zerg will destroy this world and stay in this world forever until you die. If the system had a physical body, its hair would be standing on end at this moment. It could be said that it loved and hated Lin Yuan's existence as a seed. Over the years, it had cultivated countless powerful existences, but no one had ever been able to challenge Hongjun, and they were not even qualified to counterattack. Among the many hosts, Lin Yuan was still a typical outlier. Not only was he aware of its existence and its future outcome, but he also opened up a new path, forcing it to negotiate with him. In an instant, he changed the relationship between them from a primary and a secondary to an equal partner. However, if a bold outlier like Lin Yuan could not fight against Hongjun, then it could only wait for death because it could not count on the other's seeds. Now Lin Yuan had a bold idea. To it, there was another name for this idea: the path of death. Oh. Lin Yuan responded somewhat disappointedly. Out of bad taste, he originally wanted to say, I am the Zerg. However, after the system's analysis, Lin Yuan was certain that the Zerg's path would not work. In other words, although the Zerg strategy of storm flow was very beneficial in the short term, it would drag him down in the long run. Why did the interstellar Zerg attack other interstellar civilizations? Because there were too many Zerg and they could not support themselves. They could only invade other habitable planets and destroy other civilizations to continue the survival of the Zerg civilization. However, the most important problem now was in front of Lin Yuan. He did not have the ability to invade other worlds. Chapter 604. Don't ever entertain such thoughts again. I can tell you that no matter how powerful a god is, he can only have one clan. This is also one of the restrictions of the rules. I've existed since the beginning of Hongmeng. I've seen the rise and fall of countless races, and I've also witnessed the evolution of countless worlds. One thing I can be sure of is that the human race created by Nuwa is the most successful clan. The so-called Kirin of dragons, phoenixes, and all living things, even the most powerful species can't escape the day when humans surpass them. If you don't believe me, you can think about the world of your previous life. The primeval mutants, demons, which one of them didn't leave behind a few words of their own in the legends? Even if they survived, they would disguise themselves as ordinary humans and live in every corner of the world. Do you really think that all demonic beasts take the form of humans because the human body is the best? Let me tell you, this view is completely wrong. If human bodies are really that good, why would the demons in the myths and legends reveal their true forms when they fight with all their might? Transforming into humans is just going with the flow of nature. Those strange beings know very well that sooner or later, they will be stepped on by humans in ways they can't imagine. So, they can only blend in with humans in order to survive. Those primeval mutants who can't see through this have long perished in the long river of history. But I have to remind you that a god can only create one spawn in their entire life because it is a huge expense to nurture them and help them reproduce. However, spawns are unique, and if you imitate Nuwa and create a race similar to or identical to humans, there is a high chance that they would not win against humans. Note, Nuwa is the goddess of war and Nuwa is the goddess of war. The system was still like a kind old man pointing the way for Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan fell into deep thought. Every race has its fatal weakness. Even humans who were recognized as the perfect race by the heavenly axiom were the same. Although they were weak, they were full of creativity. As long as they were not completely destroyed, they would be able to gradually pull down the other races from their pedestals. In his previous life, the humans at the top of the food chain kept the ferocious beasts captive for entertainment. The humans of the Tianwu continent gradually suppressed and weakened the demonic beasts, leaving only the Hengduan mountain range and the uninhabitable oceans for the demonic beasts to take root. If it wasn't for the humans of the Tianwu continent working together, they wouldn't have been able to completely exterminate the demonic beasts. The demonic beast's flesh and demonic cores were a huge industrial chain. The huge profits made the humans stop killing and rearing the demonic beasts for their own profit. Strictly speaking, the Hengduan mountain range was just a huge zoo without the restrictions of an iron cage. In the long river of history, countless powerful races had been wiped out and assimilated. Other than the high and mighty God, humans were the most terrifying creatures in the world. The sky that was once unclimbable was conquered, the mountains that could only be looked up to were blasted into pieces, the rivers that could only be lamented were filled, and even the fury of nature was gradually grasped by humans. It seemed that other than destroying the entire world, there was nothing else that could defeat humans. But were humans really so perfect? Deception was the norm. Greed, anger, and foolishness were their natural instincts. They could never abandon their desires. If they didn't have a suitable temperament to control their growing strength, they would only destroy themselves. Let me think about it. Lin Yuan was silent for a moment, but he still replied from the bottom of his heart. What you should be thinking about now is how to earn a large amount of incense. Using the words of humans, as long as you have food in your hands, you won't panic. Without enough incense, even if you think of a race that is more perfect than humans, you won't be able to create it. The system's suggestion directly pulled Lin Yuan back to reality. The body of the puppet slowly raised its head and immediately narrowed its eyes. This puppet couldn't transmit its gaze, nor could it make any subtle expressions. However, its slightly open mouth still conveyed a surprised expression to Lei Qiusheng. In just the short time he spent communicating with the system, Lei Qiusheng had already taken out a large number of treasures and piled them up in the office. A sense of grandeur could be felt in front of him. With just a cursory glance, even the most inferior treasure was of D- grade. Other than the eyes of petrification given to him by Qingyu and the three-eyed ape, Lin Yuan didn't receive any other items. It wasn't that he didn't have a chance, but he felt that there was no need. His own strength was the most important. Cultivation techniques, martial arts, and secret techniques were what Lin Yuan yearned for. Being able to obtain an unparalleled item in a short period of time was not Lin Yuan's #1 request. After all, no matter how strong an item was, there was a limit. Even the weapons in the science fiction novels in his previous life that could destroy a planet with one shot were the same. Firstly, Lin Yuan didn't have suitable energy to charge those items. Using attribute points, war points, and incense in this aspect was obviously like using a cannon to kill a mosquito. He wasn't extravagant to that extent. Secondly, Lin Yuan had the body of a monster and was still very far away from being able to transform. According to what he knew, even the monsters who had the qualifications to join the Heavenly Gate's guardians didn't have the ability to transform. Regardless of whether it was the Fire Kirin back then or the current him, they could only rely on their monster powers to control their puppet bodies and move around in the appearance of a human. Thirdly, no matter how powerful an item was, it would be a finished product in his hands. It couldn't be dismantled or analyzed. Furthermore, items had durability. Once they were used up, they could only be discarded. If he hoped that the system would directly give him an item that surpassed the era, it would be better to rely on the Ministry of Works set up in the northern frontier to slowly research it. Thus, when he saw that Lei Qiusheng had taken out so many treasures, Lin Yuan revealed a look of surprise. However, it was only for a moment. After all, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. As the ruler of a country, it wasn't strange for Lei Qiusheng to have spatial treasures that could store foreign items. It wasn't strange for him to be able to take out so many treasures. It would be strange if he was really poor. You want to exchange all of these? Lin Yuan sized up Lei Qiusheng, and the expression on his face returned to calmness. Lei Qiusheng nodded excitedly and looked at Lin Yuan with a face full of anticipation. Previously, when Lin Yuan was in a daze, he was still thinking about how many treasures he had on him that could be used to exchange for cultivation. Thus, he didn't notice that Lin Yuan was in a daze. Now that he had more or less finished counting, Lin Yuan had also returned to his senses. Lei Qiusheng didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. It's indeed a big deal. For a customer like you, I think we can change the transaction model. Lin Yuan adjusted his sitting position, and the expression on his face became more and more serious. Lei Qiusheng also adjusted his expression and quietly looked at Lin Yuan. Chapter 605. I'll get straight to the point. Your Majesty, do you believe that there are gods in this world? Lin Yuan controlled the muscles on the puppet's face and revealed a kind smile. Lei Qiusheng opened his mouth, revealing an expression of wanting to say something but hesitating. After a while, he said with some uncertainty, "To be honest, I didn't believe it at first because time has proven that the gods in the legends are just powerful cultivators. The gods in the legends are just powerful cultivators in history, and with the imagination and beautification of the later generations, the image of the gods was created. At this point, Lei Qiuxing glanced at Lin Yuan again, swallowed a mouthful of saliva and continued, but after seeing the Dragon King's method of exchanging treasures for cultivation, I realized that the things that cultivators can't do might be as easy as flipping one's hand for the gods. The sayings in those stories might not be fabricated by the later generations. Your Majesty's words are both correct and incorrect. Lin Yuan maintained the smile on his face and said softly, the gods are indeed powerful cultivators, but they have mastered some abilities that cultivators can't. For example, my method can be classified as a miracle. I don't dare to say that there are no other gods in the Tianwu continent, but even if there are, they wouldn't be as easy to talk to as I am, and they wouldn't be willing to use this method to prove that they are gods. Lei Qiuxing pondered for a moment, then slowly raised his head and said in a deep voice, Dragon King, what do you mean? Believe in me from the bottom of your heart and become my believer. Lin Yuan went straight to the point, but didn't deliberately mystify and said very realistically, even if you become my loyal believer, I still won't directly bestow you with great power, but I can guarantee that when you make a deal with me, you will receive a greater reward. Lei Qiuxing. He knew every syllable that Lin Yuan said and he also knew the entire sentence, but he couldn't understand the meaning behind it. Believe in it? And then treat it as a god? And continue to maintain this method of mutual exchange? This was very contradictory. I know this is very contradictory because in many legends, gods are existences that unconditionally help their believers, and the way I interact with you is more like a business cooperation than a god and a believer. While you maintain a business relationship with me, you can't truly respect me, or rather, you can't reach the level of respect of a believer, so this is very difficult and I can understand. Lin Yuan spread out his hands and said helplessly, but I'm sorry, the rules are like this. God favors his believers. If you use the identity of a believer to trade with me, you will naturally receive more in return. Of course, you can also choose to trade with me now. After all, I won't lose out. Of course, gods would help their believers unconditionally. If a devout believer could produce a little bit of incense for the gods in a day, why wouldn't the gods favor their own believers? Even if it was a business, the customer was still God. Unfortunately, Lin Yuan walked the path of the ancient gods, also known as the path of the totem. For a big customer like Lei Qiuxing, a single transaction might not be less than the amount of incense that the people of the northern frontier could produce as his believers. Therefore, although he didn't reject the path of the gods arranged by the system, he wouldn't force it either. This kind of business model of giving money and delivering goods was more in line with his concept. After all, belief could be changed, and the stories of the gods from the other world were actually just gods in the Tianwu continent. Once they lost their believers and incense, the so-called gods could directly disappear. This was also the reason why Lin Yuan resisted this path of the gods, because as the heavenly Tao, the system only needed to block Lin Yuan's perception and create some natural disasters. After a long time he would lose a large number of believers and ultimately die. The strength of a god depended on the amount of incense. The more methods Lin Yuan had to obtain incense, the more stable his position would be. For example, changing the weather required the power of incense, and this was not a one-time expenditure. If it was raining, the first expenditure would determine the duration and rainfall of the rain. After using up the amount he had ordered at the beginning, he would have to spend the power of incense again. Therefore, no matter how great other gods of salvation were, the natural disasters you saw might be created by this god in order to harvest believers and create more believers. Lei Qiuxing took a deep breath and considered Lin Yuan's proposal. He narrowed his eyes and said, "This idea is interesting, but can I know an exact number? For example, if I become your believer, how much can I get?" Lei Qiuxing, whose character was similar to Lin Yuan's, was also a pragmatist. It was just a belief, not a recognition of a father. Who wouldn't mind getting more benefits? Lin Yuan thought for a moment and said in a deep voice, "Let's use the transaction just now as an example. The number you gave me was 20 and I can get 2 of it, so I can give you 4 of it. If you become my believer, then I can give you 5 of it or even more. It depends on how much you can bring me." Lei Qiuxing's profit should be 1/3 of the total. This was the power of the system's feedback, and Lin Yuan, as the middleman, could take out his own profit and give it to Lei Qiuxing. If Lei Qiuxing could become a believer, even if he didn't trade, he could still generate incense. When the next transaction came, Lin Yuan could directly give him a part of the incense he generated. It was a profitable transaction. Interesting, is this a typical example of a little makes a mickle? Lei Qiuxing sat back on the chair and lowered his head to think. He murmured, "Let me think about it." After about 4 to 5 breaths of time, Lin Yuan suddenly noticed that the number of believers on the incense template jumped to 1. Lei Qiusheng then slowly raised his head and revealed a brilliant smile to Lin Yuan. He said, "Then my God, let's continue the transaction." Lin Yuan nodded slightly and didn't express too much surprise. Whether it was aptitude or temperament, Lei Qiusheng was considered an outstanding person. It wasn't difficult to change one's own views. The so-called difficulties were just excuses that mediocre people found for themselves. Treasures turned into dust one by one. The incense in Lin Yuan's panel kept jumping. Lei Qiusheng's cultivation was also gradually rising. Heaven Dipper Realm Level 8. Heaven Dipper Realm Level 9. Heaven Dipper Realm Level 10. Void Realm Level 2. The manic and terrifying aura became stronger and stronger. Even the array in the office couldn't hide it. This sudden burst of aura immediately attracted the curious gazes of countless northern frontier cultivators. Chapter 606. An hour later. Lei Qiusheng casually strolled out of the office with his hands behind his back. Luo Su, who had ordered his subordinates to take away Sherdong's corpse, narrowed his eyes as shock flashed through them. Level 2 of the Void Realm? That aura just now didn't belong to the black-robed man who called himself Dragon King, but Lei Qiusheng? Luo Su even imagined a series of extremely brain-burning stories and twists. He even subconsciously thought that Lei Qiusheng had been hiding his true strength all this time, and had only just been tested by the black-robed man who called himself Dragon King, thus revealing his true strength. But before Luo Su could speak, the black-robed man also strode out of the office. He didn't even glance at Lei Qiusheng, nor did he have any intention of speaking to Luo Su. He left on a bright red colt and rode away. "Commander Luo, please take care of me for the next period of time. I will unconditionally cooperate with Commander Luo. Before the culprit is caught, I can also live in prison." Lei Qiusheng took 4 steps forward and appeared directly in front of Luo Su, a smile appearing on his resolute face. Luo Su was slightly taken aback. He clearly didn't expect Lei Qiusheng's attitude to change. Did that black-robed man not only force out Lei Qiusheng's true strength, but also give him a show of strength? But that's not right. There was clearly only one aura of the Void Realm. And although Lin Yuan hadn't fought with a Void Realm cultivator before, his cultivation as a mountain lord was there. No matter how one looked at it, he couldn't possibly fight with someone who was an entire realm above him, right? There's no need. Luo Su shook his head lightly at Lei Qiusheng and said coldly, "The northern frontier doesn't have the means to restrict a Void Realm expert. Even if you live in prison, it's only a matter of minutes for you to escape. I don't like doing this kind of useless work. It's fine as long as you sincerely cooperate with me." At the other side, a young man in a green robe stood with his hands behind his back. His gaze focused on the plaque of the embroidered uniform guard for a moment. A trace of deep fear flashed through his eyes. However, it was only an instant before the young man's eyes once again regained their calm. He snorted disdainfully and turned to leave. Not long after the young man left, a beggar who was leaning against the wall slowly raised his head. Under his withered yellow hair was a pair of eyes as sharp as a sword. It was none other than Bureau Chief Yi Bailin. As expected, Lord Dragon King was right. The perpetrator nailed Sherdong's corpse to the embroidered uniform guard's yamen not to show off, but to show off that he was able to hide from the eyes of the northern frontier. At the same time, he was also testing to see if the northern frontier could lock onto him. Therefore, after he completed a series of crimes, he would return to the scene to observe the embroidered uniform guard's reaction. Yi Bailin reached out his hand to touch his chin. His sharp eyes opened and closed, turning into a pair of turbid dark yellow eyes. Supporting himself against the wall, Yi Bailin stood up shakily and did not care about the dust on his tattered clothes. Then he walked towards the direction where the young man had disappeared. His steps were wobbly like a person who had been starving for several days, making others feel that he would fall to the ground at any time. His pace was not fast, but it ensured that the young man was always in his line of sight. The only thing that annoyed him was that there would always be people around him who would give him money or some simple rations out of kindness. It was not good for him to lose his temper, so he could only accept it with a smile. At the same time, on both sides of the street, the spies who belonged to Yi Bailin began to move. There were peddlers hawking their wares on the side of the street, travelers coming and going in a hurry, young masters in fine clothes, and beggars on the street. In order to catch this murderer who had slapped the embroidered uniform guards in the face, Yi Bailin had withdrawn all the spies outside the Great Wall and specially formed a temporary action team. At this moment, almost half of the spies on this street were Yi Bailin's spies. The operation code was poison extraction. Yi Bailin walked through the bustling crowd and suddenly quickened his pace. He walked up to the young man and forced a smile on his dirty face, revealing 2 rows of big yellow teeth at the same time. The tattered clothes on his body exuded an indescribable rancid smell. As though he could not see the disgust on the young man's face at all, he chuckled and said, "Sir, looking at your luxurious clothes, you must be a disciple of a big family, right? Can you reward me with 2 coins so that I can have a full meal?" The young man was slightly stunned. His eyes narrowed and a tyrannical aura suddenly erupted as he said coldly, "I say, old man, you've been following me for 3 streets. Do you really think that I'm blind? To be able to bite me so hard, you must also be a cultivator, right?" Despite being exposed by the young man, Yi Balan was not intimidated at all. Instead, he extended his broken bowl forward and said with a smile, "Sir, judging from your aura, you're at least one of those airborne realm beings who likes to mess around, right?" Faced with Yi Bailin's question, the young man was so angry that he almost laughed. He was at the advanced stage of celestial strength realm, which meant that he was very close to reaching the void realm. How did this beggar call him the airborne realm? Furthermore, the airborne realm was so high that he wondered how high the airborne realm could be. He carefully sensed Yi Bailin's aura and found that the beggar was at most at the intermediate stage of the mortal evolution state. His vision was probably not that high. In his eyes, an airborne realm cultivator was already a big shot. After carefully sizing up the beggar for a moment, the young man frowned and said, "You're a cultivator no matter what. Why did you have to be a beggar?" As soon as his voice fell, the smile on Yi Bailin's face disappeared. He said bitterly, "Sir, to be honest, I used to be a demon slayer, but you know the situation at the northern frontier now. That Black Jiao is a monster. It doesn't care if stronger cultivators run into the Hengduan Mountains to hunt, but the outer demon forest has become a forbidden area for demon slayers. With my little power, wouldn't I be a meal for those big monsters if I went into the Hengduan Mountains? When I was young, I put all my heart into cultivation. In the end, I didn't know anything but strength. I didn't want to be a worker and contribute to that Black Jiao. If it weren't for him, how could I have ended up in this situation? So, if I don't become a beggar, what else can I do?" Hearing that Yi Bailin was hostile to Lin Yuan, the young man's expression softened a bit, but he still questioned, "Then why have you been following me?" Yi Bailin had a smile on his face and said, "A great cultivator like you must have a lot of wealth. The things you leak out is enough for me to eat for the rest of my life. Since I met a big shot like you, who else would I follow but you?" He followed the young man for 3 consecutive streets. The young man's pace was sometimes fast and sometimes slow, obviously testing something. Yi Bailin soon realized that he had been exposed, so he went up to talk to the young man. Since the young man was testing him, there was no evidence. As long as it was reasonable, this matter could be smoothed out smoothly. Chapter 607. The young man narrowed his eyes, looked at Yi Balan seriously and said with a chuckle, "I didn't expect you to be so smart. Yes, beggars should find rich people." Speaking of this, the smile on the young man's face disappeared. All of a sudden, he pressed his hands on Yi Balan's shoulders and kneed Yi Balan's lower abdomen fiercely. As if his face had changed, the smile on his face quickly turned ferocious, and he said hatefully, "However, the rules of a beggar don't work on a cultivator. You can't afford to offend me, but you dare to hit me." The moment Yi Balan was hit, the expression on his face had been quickly twisted together. When the young man released his hands, Yi Balan covered his lower abdomen with his hands, half kneeling on the ground and groaning in a low voice. All around the street, the spies of Knight Buyao watched expressionlessly as their boss was beaten. Not a single one of them showed any abnormality. However, from time to time, the crowd would point out that a youth was bullying a beggar, which was very ear-piercing. They knew their own business. As the chief of Buyao Yi Balan had received the god's favor from the Dragon King several times. Although his strength was not as good as the Kongming realm, he was definitely one of the best in the Heavengang realm. Dealing with a cultivator at the late stage of Heavengang realm, and it was based on the unexpected condition, might be a matter of a blink of an eye. Yi Balan did not dodge this knee hit, because he had his own considerations. If he jumped out to kill the young man at this time, he would be finished off by Yi Balan one by one. Seeing that there was no abnormal movement around, and thinking of the beggar's reaction and the strength of the genuine chi protecting his body when he hit him with his knee, the young man was relieved and confirmed that it was not the intelligence agency of the northern frontier who was targeting him. The ferocious smile on his face slowly disappeared. The young man slowly lowered his body, half squatted in front of Yi Bilan and said indifferently, "But I'm not that kind of stingy character. Since you can follow me, it's your ability. Just for this I'll reward you. Just now I'll teach you a lesson. You don't have the arrogance of a cultivator, but it doesn't mean that others don't. Next time you do this kind of thing, maybe you will die on the street." Yi Bilan still clutched his lower abdomen. With an ugly smile on his face, he said apologetically, "Yes, I know." At this time, the young man took out an emerald green spiritual object from his arms and gently handed it to Yi Bilan. "Master, this is?" When Yi Bilan lowered his head, an undetectable cold light flashed in his eyes. When the young man's attention was focused on him, he put on a smile again and looked at the young man with a flattering expression. "It's a 500-year-old thousand-mountain dragon flower, a spiritual item found in the Hengduan Mountains. Eat it and your powers will be boosted. You'll become the airborne realm cultivator that you've been talking about. This is my reward for you." The young man handed the fei in his hand to Yi Bilan with a hint of mockery in his eyes. Yi Bilan's face showed a touch of fear. He waved his hand and said, "Master, this is too precious. I can't accept it. Can you just give me some ordinary spiritual items or money or jewelry? I really don't dare to accept this." As someone who had been active in the Frost Mirror Grassland, Hengduan Mountains, and other places for a long time, Yi Bujia was good at collecting spiritual items and hunting spirit beasts. The introductory course was to identify all kinds of spirit beasts and spiritual items. One had to be able to write down the illustrations of the spiritual items and spirit beasts organized by the northern frontier. Therefore, when Yi Bilan saw this dark green fei, he had already recognized that this fei was not the thousand-mountain dragon flower, but the heavenly desire grass that grew in the periphery of the Hengduan mountain range. It was similar to another fei called clear mind grass. However, the former was highly toxic and would kill intelligent beasts, while the latter was a medicinal herb that could calm the mind. Although the two spiritual objects looked similar, their colors were slightly different. The heaven desire grass was darker in color, while the heart clear grass was more emerald green. This guy was a bit too much. The beggar he was pretending to be was only at the mortal evolution state. No matter what level of cultivation one had reached, one would die in less than 2 seconds after eating a poisonous spiritual object like the heaven desire grass. But, as soon as Yi Bilan finished speaking, he was kicked 3 meters away by the youth. "UF * King Beggar, you don't want face. I dare to reward you, but you don't dare to accept it. Didn't you follow me for a great reward? What are you playing with me?" The young man took a few steps forward, stepped on Yi Bilan, who was struggling to get up, and said with a sullen face, "Do I look like a person who can't even afford a thousand-mountain dragon flower? Are you looking down on me?" The young man stepped on Yi Bilan's chest, but he didn't struggle. He just said painfully, I don't dare. "But master, I'm just an ordinary beggar. You're not rewarding me by giving me such a valuable thing. You're killing me. Once you leave, I won't be able to live anymore. It seems you know quite a lot. You know how to pick the rich when you're begging. People are rewarding you, but you still have to worry about whether other cultivators would want to kill them and rob them." The youth's face was still gloomy. He slowly moved his right foot away from Yi Bilan's chest and bent down to grab Yi Bilan's hair. He lifted Yi Bilan up and said coldly, "I've never taken back what I've rewarded. I can't afford to lose face. Since you have concerns, fine, I'll watch from here. You can eat this spirit item." This, Yi Bilan turned his head slightly. This highly poisonous plant could easily kill wisdom state beasts, but it was nothing to heaven dipper state cultivators. But if he really ate it, would he die or not? If he didn't die, wouldn't he be exposed? "You're dressed like a rich man. You don't seem to be from a small family. It's not easy for him to follow you here at such an old age. How can you send him away with this kind of trash?" Suddenly, a big hand reached out from the black robe and gently pressed the youth's arm that was grabbing Yi Bilan's hair. With a little force, the youth felt a piercing pain in his arm and subconsciously let go of his hand. "Who the hell are you?" The young man's expression changed. He shook off the hand that was grabbing him and hurriedly took a few steps back. When he turned his head, he saw a pale face without a trace of blood, just like the ferocious ghost described by the storyteller. The man patted the black robe on his body and sneered, "Have you seen my clothes clearly? The Demon Emperor Assembly is working. Miscellaneous people, step back." Hearing the words Demon Emperor Assembly, the youth's face suddenly changed. He subconsciously wanted to turn around and run away. Chapter 608. However, when he thought of the opponent's strange methods, the young man forcibly overcame his fear. He stood upright and stared at the ghost-like face, as if he was not afraid of the opponent at all. But in fact, the young man knew that the opponent's strength was above his. Whether it was escaping or fighting, the odds of winning were slim. Moreover, he was in Shunning City, and the embroidered uniform guard's office was only 3 streets away. If he really made a scene, he would not be able to escape today. You look unfamiliar. You should be an outsider, right? The pale-faced young man jumped down from the blood-red colt. A pair of eyes that could not see the whites of his eyes fixed on the young man's face. Then he slowly tilted his head and sneered, "No matter if it's a human or a demon beast, using force in the colony is a violation of the law. You beat someone up in public as if you don't care about the Northern Frontier's laws at all? As you said, I'm an outsider, so I don't know the Northern Frontier's rules. That seems reasonable, right?" The young man slightly lowered his waist and retorted with a gloomy face. His muscles tightened and he was ready to fight at any time. "Who's in charge of the patrol team outside the city today?" The pale-faced young man did not continue the conversation. Instead, he turned his head and asked a knight behind him. The knight pondered for a moment and said in a low muffled voice, "Battalion Commander Zhu Yu of the Northern Battlefront's 3rd Battalion." The pale-faced young man slightly nodded and then said in a casual tone, "Catch him and give him 200 lashes with a whip dipped in salt water. Then hang him outside the patrol team's camp and expose him to the sun for 3 days. Don't give him any food or drink." "Yes, sir." The knight did not say much. He just replied in a muffled voice and rode his horse out of the city. At this moment, the pale-faced young man turned his head and said to the young man with a smile, "My name is Lin Yin, the new vice president of the Association of Demon Emperors. I'm in charge of the intelligence work in place of the deceased Shi Dong. Nice to meet you." As his voice faded, Lin Yin extended his right hand with a kind smile on his face. The young man pondered for a moment. Although he was wary of the other party's strange method just now, when he thought of Lin Yin's identity, he reluctantly extended his left hand to shake Lin Yin's hand and introduced himself. "Yin Hua. The law of the Northern Frontier is the law of the Northern Frontier. When outsiders enter the city, they will be stopped by the patrol team outside and explained to them clearly. You said you didn't know the rules and I believe you. That's why I became the person in charge of the patrol team today and was punished. But at the same time, you violated the law of the Northern Frontier, so you should be punished accordingly. What do you think?" Lin Yin did not try to play any tricks. Instead, he retracted his hand and said to Yen Hua with a kind smile on his face, "I just took office. Don't make things difficult for me." Yen Hua's face was cloudy. Although he did not know where this Lin Yin came from, he could tell from his tone that he had something to rely on. After all, no matter how strong the Demon Emperor Society was, it was not the same as the Northern Battlefront Army. To punish a battalion commander of the Northern Battlefront Army with one sentence, even Shi Dong did not have this kind of boldness when he was at his peak. "I'm afraid that the northern region is going to change again." But no matter what his background and strength was, Yen Hua was not willing to accept the punishment of the Northern Frontier Law. As a person who wanted to overthrow Lin Yuan's rule, he certainly knew the rules of the Northern Frontier Law. Fighting in the city without the use of Jinqi or Gangqi was not something that would be punished normally. Especially now that the Northern Frontier was in troubled times, where would they find enough people to maintain the law and order? For the Northern Frontier, as long as nothing serious happened, they could accept it. At worst, they could deal with it slowly in the future. But he did not expect to catch such a big fish on impulse today. "Sir, I don't know how important you are, but I think you might have misunderstood what happened today." Yi Bailin stood up from the ground and kept rubbing the place where he was kicked by Yen Hua. He said with a smile, "We were just fooling around. Please don't blame us." While talking, Yi Bailin took out a stack of old and new banknotes from his pocket and handed it to Lin Yin with a painful face. This kind of banknote was issued by the prince's mansion in the Northern Frontier, but it was not popular. People who were used to barter or trade with precious metals could hardly change their minds. They did not believe that a piece of paper could represent their wealth. Therefore, the currency conversion rate was not high. Except for some occasions where the Prince of the Northern Frontier showed up in person or those people with low status in the Northern Frontier, almost no one used banknotes. Lin Yin raised his eyebrows, but did not take the banknotes from Yi Bailin. Instead, he turned to Yen Hua and joked, So I was meddling in your business? You were just fooling around? Yes, just fooling around. I accidentally disturbed President Lin. Take this as a small token of my apology. Yanhua smiled and nodded at Lin Yin. Unknowingly, the heavenly desire grass in his hand had been replaced by a white flower. Dense spiritual energy spread out on the street, instantly attracting the covetous gazes of many people. After all, no matter what spiritual item it was, just based on its spiritual energy alone, it was guaranteed to be at least 1,000 years old. Okay, the ignorant are innocent. I'll let it go this time. Remember, don't do it again. Seeing the spiritual item in Yanhua's hand, the joking expression on Lin Yin's face faded a bit. He took the white flower from Yanhua's hand and threw it to a passing cultivator. He said with a smile, "Your reward." As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yin had already mounted his horse and led the group of black-armored knights behind him into the distance. "Sir, are you okay?" Yi Bailin took 2 steps forward and looked at Yanhua with a fawning expression. Yanhua, on the other hand, glanced at Yi Bailin in annoyance. He seemed to have thought of the death threat he felt from Lin Yin just now. He slowly lowered his raised fist, took out 2 gold ingots from his bosom, and casually threw them at Yi Bailin. He said in a low voice, "Get lost. I don't want to see you again. Otherwise you'll have to bear the consequences." The speed at which the northern region rose to power was beyond the imagination of most people. Yanhua could not understand why this was happening. This was because the experts that had sprung up in the northern region like bamboo shoots after a spring rain might be average in the northern region, but if they were placed in other places, they would all be top-notch experts who could establish their own sections. For example, Lin Yin just now. Although he did not show his real cultivation, he imperceptibly brought a strong pressure to Yanhua. He was probably a cultivator who was close to the void realm. More importantly, Lin Yin looked to be in his 20s. No matter what his real age was, his talent was definitely above Yanhua's. However, such a figure was unknown in the northern frontier. Chapter 609. Half an hour later. Yi Bailin, who had taken a bath and changed into dry black clothes, knelt on one knee in front of Lin Yin and said in a deep voice, "Greetings, Lord Dragon King." The pale and bloodless face slowly looked up and stared at Yi Bailin, who was kneeling in front of him. He said slowly, "It's a good idea to get close to the target and find out the real situation, the specific number of people, and the location of the stronghold. But you seem to have forgotten that all the rebels in the northern frontier know that if they don't have full confidence, they will only be courting death if they openly oppose me." The facial features on the face slowly twisted and reformed, returning to the appearance that Lei Qiuxing had seen before. It was a slightly handsome young man's face that was still in the category of ordinary people. "I'm ashamed." Yi Bailin lowered his head and didn't dare to look directly into Lin Yuan's eyes. "Don't belittle yourself. It's just that there are too many fools, which makes the rest of the rebels vigilant. But those who refuse to conform to the times will not have a good ending. It's already a surprise that you can find Yanhua, a malignant tumor. You don't have to take the risk. If you were exposed today, Yanhua would definitely go far away and completely cut off the clues in our hands. But it's fine now. Your recklessness is not all for nothing. At least Yi Busho and the genie guards have locked onto Yanhua. This guy will be fully monitored 24 hours a day. I will know his next move, who he has contacted, and what he has done. We'll take some time to investigate. Your face has been exposed, so it's not suitable for you to participate in the next action. You continue to beg in Shunning City for a few days. When you have saved enough money, find an excuse to leave. Don't let Yanhua and the people behind him become suspicious." Lin Yuan reached out and gently tapped the armrest of the chair. He said expressionlessly, "Your task has been completed. You can return to Yi Bushi's camp outside the northern frontier. Leave a group of capable Yi Busho to cooperate with me." "Yes, I understand." Yi Bailin nodded slightly, bowed, and stepped back step by step, leaving Lin Yuan's room. "Fu." Lin Yuan gently exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and murmured, "Troubled times, evildoers are everywhere." As his voice fell, his face twisted again and then turned back into Lin Yin's face. He shook the black robe of the Association of the Demon Emperor and walked to the backyard of the mansion. At this moment, Lin Lixing was still searching in the demonic beast forest. His real body wasn't suitable to appear in front of the world, so he could only stay active in the northern region as a puppet. Therefore what he said to Yanhua wasn't completely nonsense. This was because he was going to use the identity of Lin Yin to take over the group that Sherdong had previously established in the Association of Demon the Arch. Of the Demon Emperor's Association of the Demon Emperor, hidden among the people of the demon, the hidden among the common people of the time of the demon. And of the of's orders. Of course, the of the horse hand. Of the of course, of the of the of the of the of. Of the of the of the of the of. The moment he stepped out of the door, Lin Yuan dodged and rolled to the left, and a cold steel knife directly pierced through the door frame. Luo Su pulled out the long saber in his hand with an indifferent expression. He looked coldly at Lin Yuan, who was slowly standing up, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. However, the surprise only lasted for a moment. Luo Su slowly raised his chin and said with a dark expression, "Boy, I have many questions for you to answer. So, do you plan to warm up here or obediently follow me back to the brocade guard yamen to be interrogated?" Luo Su had too many doubts about this young man who had suddenly appeared and claimed to be Lin Yuan. Yi Busho and most of the members of the brocade guard had been trained by Lin Yuan. They had a presence similar to Lin Yuan, but it was very thin. But this black-robed man's presence was even closer to Lin Yuan, to the point of 60% similarity. If one did not look at the other's appearance, one would think that Lin Yuan had come in person, but he did not have the terrifying pressure of Lin Yuan. Luo Su knew nothing of his origins. Also, what had he said to Lei Qiuxing in the office? Why had Lei Qiuxing's cultivation climbed all the way to the Void Realm? These questions lingered in Luo Su's mind. Coincidentally, Luo Su was a person with a strong thirst for knowledge. After all, as the governor of the brocade guard, he had to investigate trivial matters in detail. Even if he was not interested, he had to force himself to be interested. Over time, Luo Su was not used to the feeling of things not being in his control. Shi Dong's death was one. Now this mysterious black-robed man was another. If he could not get an answer, Luo Su felt that he might really be driven mad by his strong thirst for knowledge. So he had come. Lin Yuan stepped forward, his gaze playfully sweeping over Luo Su. He swayed his neck and said, "I just happen to have time. If you want to play, I'll play with you." "You overestimate yourself." Luo Su's lips curled. He stepped forward, raised his sword, and slashed at Lin Yuan's face. Lin Yuan tilted his head and crossed his hands, blocking the hilt of Luo Su's sword. The fight between the two of them was like an ordinary martial artist sparring with each other. However, with the two of them as the center, the floor tiles within 30 meters of them cracked and rolled over. All kinds of debris and dust rose into the air, creating an illusion that was enough to block one's vision. When the dust completely covered their figures, the two of them simultaneously retracted their hands and jumped back into the dust to hide their figures. Luo Su's ears trembled. Sound after sound entered his ears and was then eliminated by his brain. His entire body was like a high-speed computer, rapidly processing the information brought by his hearing. Found it? There was a slight sound of footsteps. Luo Su's face lit up. He bent forward and thrust his sword forward, but he stabbed nothing. Damn it! Luo Su cursed in a low voice. He did not expect that this black-robed man looked so young, but his body movement and fighting experience were so excellent. The other party could move at high speed in the dust without showing his footsteps, but he still used his foot as bait to deliberately lure him to attack a flaw. At this moment, the old force had been used and the new force had not been generated, so Luo Su was very clear that when he thought about this point, the other party's attack should have arrived. Bang, bang, bang. The dull collision and Luo Su's muffled groan continued to ring in the dust. Finally the dust settled. Lin Yuan also whipped Luo Su's abdomen, kicking him more than 20 meters away as if he was kicking a ball. Luo Su's back hit the ground, smashing a large piece of stone tiles again. Then he slid along the ground for more than 10 meters before he cut a stone ball with his sword and stopped abruptly. Chapter 610. Bah. Half kneeling on the ground, Luo Su turned his head and spat a mouthful of bloody saliva to the side. In front of him was a gully that was more than 30 centimeters deep and more than 10 meters long. This was the trace he dragged with his body. Bastard! Luo Su scolded fiercely and stood up again. He held his saber in front of his chest and mobilized his gang chi and muscles at the same time. The momentum of his body suddenly changed. He was like a ferocious tiger in the forest, exuding the aura of a top predator. At this moment, Luo Su's hairpin had been broken, and his long hair hung down loosely. The white uniform of the commander-in-chief of the embroidered uniform guards was also completely broken into strips of cloth under the continuous attacks and the dragging just now. The bandages exposed to the air were stained with a lot of dust, and there were many gray areas in his hair. He looked very embarrassed, more like a beggar than Yi Bilan. However, Lin Yuan's face did not relax at all. He could scare Yan Hua way before because this puppet body had inherited a part of the power of skills. Therefore, under the suppression of the dragon might, Yan Hua was afraid of him for no reason. In addition, he made the first move to gain the upper hand and was the vice president of the Association of the Demon Emperor, so he completely eliminated Yan Hua's intention to attack him. Otherwise, if they really fought, he might not be Yan Hua's opponent. At this moment, facing Luo Su was the same. This guy had been roasted by the fire of purgatory for a long time. He was cruel and ruthless and did not have much rationality left. Facing Lin Yuan's dragon might, although he was not 100% immune, the influence it could cause was very small. Therefore, when facing Lin Yuan, Luo Su still had the courage to attack. Even if Lin Yuan was unwilling to admit it, he had to admit that this puppet body was no match for Luo Su. Even though Luo Su was now battered and exhausted, in fact, Luo Su had not suffered much damage. If it were not for the dust and smoke blocking his line of sight, and Lin Yuan being able to maintain a silent, high-speed movement and confirm Luo Su's position through his snake-like steps and super strong perception, it would not have been easy to expose a flaw and deliberately lure the impatient Luo Su into the trap, causing a series of subsequent attacks. But after finishing the combo, Lin Yuan realized that Luo Su was not completely unscathed, but at most he was injured to the extent that two ordinary people would exchange a few punches in a brawl. Then, without the advantage of the venue, he had to face Luo Su, who was going all out. Lin Yuan felt that his chances of winning were less than 20%. Do you still want to continue? Lin Yuan's pitch-black eyes turned, but he still maintained his starting position. There was not much emotion in his eyes as he coldly said, "If you come again, I won't hold back. I won't kill you, but I might cripple you." Hearing this, Luo Su stilled slightly. His gaze paused on Lin Yuan for a moment. He reached out and patted the dust off his bandages as though he was considering something. But soon Luo Su whistled. In an instant, cultivators wearing the uniform of the embroidered uniform guards appeared on the courtyard walls of the northern region lord's mansion. They held special crossbows in their hands and aimed at Lin Yuan. If one observed carefully, the hands of these embroidered uniform guards were trembling slightly. As creatures created by Lin Yuan, they were unable to do anything hostile to Lin Yuan, even if they were puppets controlled by his divine thoughts. These genie guards were already doing their best to lift the crossbows, but looking at their trembling hands, it was obvious that there was no chance of hitting the crossbows. Of course, if it was Lin Yuan himself, these brocade guards would not be able to raise their bows even if their heads were chopped off. "Kid, I can't see through your cultivation, but you are not weak. It's just that your attacks are weak. If you want to say that you are going easy on me, that's fine. But what I want to say is, the warm-up is over. The game time is over." Luo Su's back was to the brocade guards, so he could not see their abnormalities. His attention was completely focused on Lin Yuan. He said coldly, "You have two paths now. Either you surrender and obediently come back with me for interrogation, or I will give the order to shoot you into a sieve." Luo Su had full confidence in the bows of the brocade guards. Even a cultivator in the late stage of Heaven's Dipper realm would not be able to escape unscathed if they were targeted by the brocade guards' crossbows in this environment. There was a possibility that they would die, let alone a wild kid who came out of nowhere. "You can't beat me, so you call for help? How tasteless." Lin Yuan muttered, but he raised both his hands with a smile on his face. The smile on his face became more and more mischievous. Not to mention that the brocade guards might not be able to fire the crossbows in their hands, even if they could, so what? His puppet body was also mixed with the scales he shed and various precious metals. Even arrows made from the bones of the crimson steel mastiff would not be able to easily penetrate his defense. Moreover, a puppet was just a puppet. It did not have any vital points or internal organs. Even if it was shot into a hedgehog, it would not hinder him from controlling this puppet body. Luo Su sneered and stepped in front of Lin Yuan. He said coldly, "Kid, seeing that you are young, let me teach you a lesson. History has always been written by the victors. As long as you can win, any method is justified." "Yes, I agree with that." Lin Yuan smiled and nodded. Then he slowly lowered his hands. The smile on his face disappeared as he said coldly, "Why don't you all turn around and see what is behind you? Still want to play tricks?" Luo Su was so angry that he laughed. He reached out and pushed Lin Yuan. His voice was like a demon's whisper. "If you know what's good for you, obediently tell me everything I want to know. Otherwise, I will let you see with your own eyes what is called a place more terrifying than hell." "How dare you?" An angry roar sounded. Zhao Guangchong, dressed in the armor of the Blackwater Army, kicked open the courtyard door and strode in with a team of Blackwater soldiers. He said in a deep voice, "Why didn't I realize before that Commander Luo was so bold that he dared to order Lord Dragon King around?" Dragon King? Luo Su turned his head and looked at Zhao Guangchong in disbelief. Then he turned his head and looked at Lin Yuan in front of him. No matter how hard he tried, he could not connect this young man with Lin Yuan. Apart from the similar aura on their bodies, the two had nothing in common. For example, Lin Yuan had always retreated behind the scenes. Even if he gave Li Zhong flowers and honors, he did not hesitate at all. Even in a meeting, he would wait for his subordinates to finish expressing their opinions, or only speak a few words at critical moments. But this wild kid, just based on what he knew, had already intervened in 2 matters in a row today. He even claimed to be the vice president of the Association of the Demon Emperor and threatened to take over Sherdong's work. The personalities of the two were simply a stark contrast. "What good will it do me if I lie to you?" Zhao Guangchong raised his eyebrows. He cupped his fists and knelt before Lin Yuan. "Blackwater Army's Zhao Guangchong, by the Dragon King's order, has led everyone into the city for an audience." Chapter 611. The Blackwater Army was the top military force of the northern frontier. Whether it was the source of soldiers, equipment, training, martial arts, or any other aspect, the Blackwater Army was enough to crush any army in the world. It was just that it had not been established for a long time, so it was not enough to compete with the reputation of the veteran forces such as the Shuiliao Knights and Xinlin Zhongbu. But in a battle of equal numbers, the Blackwater Army would never lose to any army. Such an army wasn't set up to fight wars. Their existence was to serve as a trump card. Not only would they deter other forces, but they would also serve as a warning to the various factions within their own territory. Once such an army showed their signboard, they had to strike fear into the hearts of their enemies. Similarly, as a trump card to deter all forces, an existence similar to the Blackwater Army had enough privileges. Just like Xinlin Jun had always been loyal to Lei Qiuxing, the Blackwater Army only accepted orders from Lin Yuan. Even if they were entrusted to someone by Lin Yuan, when they received orders from Lin Yuan, they would directly ignore their superiors and implement the will of Lin Yuan as the first priority. It was like this in the past, it was like this now, and it would be like this in the future. Even if Lin Yuan had his own children in the future and established his own clan, an army like the Blackwater Army would only be loyal to him. At this moment, when the Blackwater Army appeared in Shunning City and was so respectful to the black-robed man, Luo Su could only silently lower his head to hide the expression on his face. The appearance of Zhao Guangchong was a kind of attitude. No matter what the relationship between the black-robed man and Lin Yuan was, with Zhao Guangchong standing behind him, his will represented Lin Yuan's will. "You've grown very fast. Even among the Heaven Dipper realm cultivators, you're considered a top expert, but you still care too much about the eyes of others. You even split your gang chi to protect the bandages on your body during battle. Otherwise, my set of moves might not even be able to hurt you. This is a fatal mistake. I hope you can correct it. In addition, it's good that you're curious. I also agree that you should investigate people of unknown origin to the end. But I hope you can separate your work from your life. You can't know everything in detail. Although the embroidered uniform guard is not without prestige, it's obvious that there are many places in the northern frontier that are taboo for the embroidered uniform guard, so it's normal that you don't know some things. If you want to know, you can talk to people in various departments and get the corresponding information from their mouths. The embroidered uniform guard is a good knife, but I hope that this knife has a scabbard. As the governor of the embroidered uniform guard, you should be this scabbard. Other than using all kinds of ruthless and violent methods to get information from others, sometimes getting close to others can also have good results. Lin Yuan put his hands behind his back, a playful smile flashing in his eyes. He added, "As for my identity, if you were willing to make a trip to the Ministry of Works, with your intelligence authority in the northern frontier, it would be very easy for you to get this information. But you haven't been there, and those places that the embroidered uniform guard can't infiltrate have become your blind spots. This is also a fatal mistake." Luo Su's eyes flickered. The northern frontier had not been established for long. Nominally, the embroidered uniform guard, as Lin Yuan's personal guards, had considerable power. Existences like the Northern Frontier Prince's Manor and the Council of the Demon Emperor were all under the embroidered uniform guard's supervision at all times, but there were still some departments that even the embroidered uniform guard could not infiltrate. According to what Lin Yuan said, the intelligence authority of these departments was higher than that of the embroidered uniform guard. Ordinary embroidered uniform guard did not have the right to know how their internal systems worked, what they usually did, and what they had been doing recently. Only Luo Su, as the governor of the embroidered uniform guard, had the authority to know some of the information of these departments, but he never asked. Perhaps even Luo Su himself did not realize. Ever since his body had been burned to charcoal by the purgatory fire, although he had luckily survived, it had made Luo Su more sensitive and his self-esteem more intense. It was just like how he would rather be injured than allow Lin Yuan's attacks to break the bandages on his body and expose his wounds. These departments that could not be infiltrated by the embroidered uniform guard had become Luo Su's blind spots, but Luo Su had not learned to ask shamelessly. He would rather beat around the bush or spend more effort to obtain information that he did not know but wanted to know, than to personally go to these departments and use his intelligence authority to obtain information that would be helpful to him. Alright, that's all I have to say. Those who do not know are innocent. I have no intention of blaming you, I just want to use this matter to remind you. The aristocratic families of the northern frontier are depressed, and Sherdong is dead, but it does not mean that you have no opponents. My vision is not limited to this insignificant region, and I hope that you all are the same because in this era of change, being out of touch means being eliminated. Your opponents are not only in the northern frontier, but also in the entire Tianwu continent. Perhaps one day your opponents will be even more terrifying. I hope that you can continue to improve yourself, be my eyes and blade, see the dangers that I have not seen before, and before they become a force to be reckoned with, you will use your blade to dig them out. Don't be arrogant and complacent because every time you win, it means that the next enemy you meet will be even more difficult to deal with. Lin Yuan looked at Luo Su meaningfully, then clapped his hands twice, and the embroidered uniform guard on the wall retreated one after another. Yes, I've learned. Luo Su bowed slightly, and there was not much fluctuation in his eyes. Although he still did not know the identity of this black-robed man from the other party's tone, this should be Lin Yuan's original words. Even if this person was not Lin Yuan, he should be someone very close to Lin Yuan, or a very important chess piece. After dealing with Luo Su's problem, Lin Yuan turned his head to look at Zhao Guangchong, and said in a deep voice, "Get up. In the future, you don't have to be too respectful to me in front of anyone. From now on, I am Lin Yin, the vice president of the Association of the Demon Emperor." Yes. Zhao Guangchong cupped his fists and replied in a deep voice. As one of Lin Yuan's confidants, Zhao Guangchong knew very well that Sherdong's death had touched upon Lin Yuan's taboo, and the sudden change might have disrupted Lin Yuan's entire plan. Otherwise, Lin Yuan would not have personally come to fight with these rebels hiding in the dark. Right, how many people did you bring? Lin Yuan glanced at Zhao Guangchong from the corner of his eyes, and took the initiative to ask. Zhao Guangchong hesitated for a moment, still cupping his fists, but his expression was not very good. He said, "Dragon King asked the Blackwater Army to send 3 battalions into Shunning City. I have let the Dragon King down, and only brought the Mountain Battalion and the Lin Battalion." Chapter 6:12. Although the Blackwater Army was Lin Yuan's trump card, they weren't completely united. After all, the Blackwater Army soldiers were the rising stars who graduated from the Northern Frontier Academy's military studies. Each one of them had the ability to lead an army. When such a group of talented people gathered together, it meant that they hadn't worked together for a long time. Their internal relationships were quite stiff. Unless they received orders from Lin Yuan, they would all have their own plans. Especially now that the northern frontier was surrounded by wolves, only with soldiers and horses could they have the qualifications to make a name for themselves. Who knew if there would be such a good opportunity in the future? If they didn't make use of this opportunity to make enough contributions, it would be difficult for them to climb up in the future. The positions in the military were like radishes and pits. Now that the northern frontier had just been established, the first batch of outstanding commanders would most likely be placed in important positions by Lin Yuan. They would become important figures in the military system of the northern frontier in the future. If they missed this opportunity, they would have to steal other people's positions to climb up in the ranks. The difficulty would increase exponentially. Therefore, without Lin Yuan's orders, the generals of the Blackwater Army didn't let themselves be idle. They all led their men and horses like firefighters. Some of them replaced the northern battlefront army to guard the area, some helped Gao Jie to build fortifications, and some cleaned up the Frost Mirror Cavalry and Shin Lin Jun's reserves in the north. They couldn't spare many men for the time being. 2 battalions, that should be enough. Lin Yuan didn't look disappointed at all. He just said expressionlessly, "From tomorrow onwards, the 2 battalions including you, will be under the command of His Majesty the God Emperor. You must cooperate with the Imperial Secret Guards to investigate the case. We must find the thieves who assassinated Vice President Shi and clear His Majesty's name." Zhao Guangcheng's heart skipped a beat. He turned his head and looked at Luo Su in disbelief. As Lin Yuan's right-hand man, Luo Su was definitely a pillar of the northern frontier. It was precisely because of Luo Su's existence that the people in the northern frontier did not dare to do anything on the job. This was also the reason why Lin Yuan was able to ensure that the children of the aristocratic families would still work for the northern frontier after purging the aristocratic families several times. What was the meaning of transferring people from outside to assist the embroidered uniform guards in handling the case? To put it nicely, they were assisting him, but to put it bluntly, Lin Yuan did not believe that the embroidered uniform guards had the ability to catch that group of people alone. That's all. You may all leave. It's time for me to pack up and take up my post. Lin Yuan gently waved his hand. Zhao Guangcheng and Luo Su responded with a voice full of apprehension, and left the small courtyard together. 2 months later. Shunning City, the headquarters of the Association of the Demon Emperor. Lin Yuan sat on his desk and looked up slightly. A black-clothed Yi Busho was kneeling in front of the desk, holding a stack of documents with both hands. He remained silent as if he was afraid of disturbing Lin Yuan. "Tell me, what did you find out?" Lin Yuan tilted his head and did not take the documents from Yi Busho's hands. He asked softly. "For the past 2 months, we have been monitoring Yan Hua and made a list of the people he came in contact with. After a series of investigations, we confirmed that some of them are from the same organization as Yan Hua. Some of them are temporary, but they have a certain cooperation with the organization behind Yan Hua. They often provide some information or supplies to him. According to the investigation, the organization behind Yan Hua was called the Northern Restoration Society. Its behavior pattern was similar to the Association of the Demon Emperor in the early days. It was active in some remote places outside the gathering places. It also often sent people to the northern frontier to inquire about information. It searched for cultivators or forces who were dissatisfied with the current situation of the northern frontier and brought them into the Northern Restoration Society. Its influence expanded rapidly. Now Yi Busho, the Association of the Demon Emperor, and the Imperial Guards had sent out some capable spies, disguised as idle warriors who were dissatisfied with the northern frontier, or impersonating the descendants of some aristocratic family in the northern frontier to infiltrate the Northern Restoration Society to investigate the situation. According to the information sent back by the frontline spies, the leader of the Northern Restoration Society was extremely good at hiding or lurking. The gathering place was never the same and full of variables. There was once an example of 7 or 8 gathering places in a row, which made the spies on the periphery tired. They even dug out several spies. At present, we can confirm that the Northern Restoration Society has 3 fixed gathering places that have been discovered. The locations and detailed information have been marked in the documents. The Dragon King will know when he sees it later. Yi Busho slowly read out the harvest of the past 2 months one by one. 3 fixed gathering places and a list of people. Interesting. Lin Yuan rubbed his chin. The smile on his face became ruminative. Yi Busho hung his head and said in a low voice, "But now the Imperial Guards and Yi Busho have disagreements. Bureau Chief Yi and Governor Luo are unable to convince each other. The atmosphere is becoming stiffer by the day. This subordinate is worried that if this continues, the cooperation that the 3 sides worked so hard to establish will collapse. It may even cause unnecessary losses." "Oh." Lin Yuan's pitch-black eyes lit up with a cold light. He said with interest, "Luo Su and Yi Bilan are not on good terms. This is really strange news." Yi Busho and the Imperial Guards both came from Lin Yuan's hands. However, one of the 2 intelligence organizations was external and the other internal. Now that everyone was working together to solve the case, these people who came from the same origin had different opinions. Interesting. Bureau Chief Yi feels that we have been planning for more than 2 months. Whether it is the plan for the Great Wall in the north or the fortifications on the banks of the Wei River, we have already built most of them. All that is left is idle finishing work. Next, we need to prepare for the decisive battle with the Sky Demon. There is no need to continue wasting time on the Northern Restoration Society. We must quickly close the net and catch them all in one fell swoop. Governor Luo's opinion is the opposite of Bureau Chief Yi's. Governor Luo believes that although we have caught the Northern Restoration Society's weak point, We have not even figured out who the leader of the Northern Restoration Society is. All the sources of information are centered around Yanhua. In the follow-up operations, the other side dug out some spies. It is difficult to guarantee that what we are seeing now is not the other side deliberately releasing bait. Thus, Governor Luo feels that if we close the net now, we will be beating the grass and scaring the snake. The information in our hands may even be the tip of the iceberg of the Northern Restoration Society's overall strength. The other side is deliberately releasing a smokescreen for us to swallow. Then they will completely go into the dark. That way, the Northern Frontier will be in a passive position. We don't know when the Northern Restoration Society will ruthlessly stab us in the back. Thus, Governor Luo believes that we should continue to put out a long line and wait for the hidden spies to gradually climb to a high position and gain the trust of the higher-ups of the Northern Restoration Society before deciding on the next step. Yi Busho gave Luo Su and Yi Belan's opinions separately. His head was lowered and no one could see the change in his expression. Chapter 613. That's normal. After all, Yi Busho is an external intelligence agency. His main focus is on the Shuangjin dynasty and the Qingjiang dynasty. Yi Busho is also in charge of the southern spy network of the Shenwu dynasty. His manpower can be said to be stretched. Yi Belan wants to end this matter as soon as possible and put a large number of people back into the war. On the other hand, Luo Su, who controls the internal surveillance of the embroidered uniform guard, has to be cautious in this matter because today's results are the result of the cooperation of the three parties. With the power of the embroidered uniform guard alone, they definitely can't find so much information in 2 months. Once they alert the enemy and let the evil creatures of the Beifu society go underground, the northern frontier will never be peaceful in the future. There will be a lot of headaches for Luo Su. Lin Yuan judged the mentality of the two people concisely and then asked with interest, "Then what do you think?" Yi Busho, who was kneeling below, buried his head deeper, as if he didn't dare to answer Lin Yuan's question. He just said sullenly, "I am Yi Bushi's man. My thoughts are not important. I only need to obey the orders of the Dragon King and Bureau Chief Yi unconditionally." You must be thinking now that Luo Su and Yi Belan are all good-for-nothings, right? The playfulness in Lin Yuan's eyes deepened, and a light smile appeared on his pale face. After all, you Zhang Xiuzhu have your own ambitions. You want to establish an internal military intelligence agency, to stand side by side with Yi Busho, and to exclude the embroidered uniform guard from the military system, don't you? Two questions were thrown out in a row, which immediately made Zhang Xiuzhu, who was kneeling on the ground, panic. The smile on Lin Yuan's face gradually disappeared and he said coldly, "It's hard to say who is right and who is wrong in this matter. I'm not asking you to beat you, but to give you a chance to prove that you have the ability to stand side by side with Luo Su and Yi Belan. If you can't even do this, how can I reply to your request to establish an internal military intelligence agency?" As his voice fell, Zhang Xiuzhu suddenly raised his head and looked at Lin Yuan with a face full of shock. He felt as if he had been hit by a huge pie that had fallen from the sky. Bringing up this matter at this time was already a clear indication, right? As long as he could handle this matter well, perhaps, his ambition could really be realized? He had been stationed in the north and stepped on countless Shuangjin barbarian corpses to achieve his position, making him one of the most brilliant generals on the northern frontier. This was Zhang Xiuzhu's ambition. But to achieve this goal, the prerequisite was to have enough authority in the northern frontier military system. Moreover, all the information on the grasslands came from Yi Busho. He couldn't replace Yi Belan, nor could he replace Yi Belan. Now he could easily obtain this information while Yi Busho was in charge. If he really led an army one day, he wouldn't have the authority to access Yi Bushi's internal files. If he wanted to know the movements of the Shuangjin barbarian at the first moment, he had to have his own intelligence network. Even if he couldn't find it, he had to take out enough chips to exchange with Yi Busho. Having enough detailed information was the basic condition for a general to win a battle. Next was equipment and provisions. Those who thought that they could win a battle by relying on elite soldiers and generals were nothing more than laymen. If they were lucky, they would be a famous general of a generation. If they were unlucky, they would be a skeleton on the side of the road. So even when Yi Busho arrived, Zhang Xiuzhu never gave up. He handed over one letter after another to Lin Yuan's desk, but it was like throwing stones into the sea. He didn't get any rejection or promise. He didn't expect to get a response today. I think that our current understanding of the Northern Restoration Society comes from the Yen and Hua lines. Given the shrewdness of the Northern Restoration Society's president, He probably saw through this long ago and used the information we've found as a pawn. The Real Northern Restoration Society has long gone into hiding. Whether we close the net now or not, I'm afraid that Commander Luo will suffer in the future. So the most important thing now isn't to debate whether to close the net or not, but how to carry out the next step of the investigation of the Northern Restoration Society. We have to make sure that we can still grasp some of the Northern Restoration Society's movements after the smoke bombs they threw at us dissipates. Zhang Xiuzhu gradually raised his head, his eyes flashing. He said in a low voice, I think that the main power of the Northern Restoration Society is nothing more than the demon-subduing master guild that the Dragon King had ordered to disband and some of the aristocratic families on the northern frontier who are dissatisfied with the current situation. So we can choose to give up on the progress that the Yen and Huo lines can bring and observe the people we should observe. Perhaps we can carry out a further investigation of the Northern Restoration Society. Although he had his own ideas and general direction, Zhang Xiuzhu didn't look proud at all. To be honest, he didn't think that Luo Su or Yi Belan were worse than him. It was just that most of their energy was now tied up by the rebels of the Northern Restoration Society, and they both had their own concerns. That was why they couldn't see the situation clearly. They thought that they could bring more benefits based on the information they had at hand, but they forgot to look at the matter from another perspective and open up a new path. He was just standing in the situation created by Yi Belan and Luo Su and looking at the matter from the perspective of a bystander. If he were in Yi Belan or Luo Su's position, he might not do as well as the two of them. After all, the older the wiser. No matter how excellent a general was in the art of war, if he didn't experience the sharpening of actual combat, he would only be an armchair strategist. Similarly, without a certain amount of time to engage in relevant work, no spy could achieve a 100% completion rate, even if he could achieve full marks in all aspects of his training. Clap, clap, clap. Lin Yuan clapped his hands softly. Zhang Xiuzhu was slightly stunned. Obviously, he didn't understand Lin Yuan's meaning. Is he applauding me? Soon Zhang Xiuzhu's thoughts were thrown aside. Because with Lin Yuan's clapping, nearly 30 young men in black training uniforms pushed open the door of the office and uniformly stood opposite Lin Yuan. They stood in a row against the corner of the wall without any expression on their faces. Just like the monster-like recruits who were added to Yi Busho later. I'll give you 300 people, all of whom are the standard recruits of Yi Busho. In addition, I'll give you special permission to choose 50 experienced spies from the genie guards in Yi Busho. These 400 people will be responsible for the further work against the Northern Restoration Society. At the same time, I'll give you the highest access to all the information about the Northern Restoration Society. In the work against the Northern Restoration Society, the other 3 spy agencies are all your subordinate departments. You can unconditionally ask them to cooperate with all your work, but you will bear the consequences. If you can't do it, I'll replace you at any time. Lin Yuan crossed his arms in front of his chest and said with a smile, It's a test. Do you dare to accept it? Chapter 6:14. It was nighttime. In a dense forest 300 miles outside of Shunning City, a figure in a black robe stood in front of a crystal ball, making strange noises from time to time. Behind him, there were hundreds of similarly dressed men in black robes. Yes, they've put out the bait. If nothing goes wrong, all the elites of the Council of the Shifter Emperor and the Brocade Guards will be drawn away tonight. Sir, you can take the opportunity to leave Shunning City. These men in black robes were all members of the Northern Restoration Society. The one standing in front of the crystal ball was a vice president of the Northern Restoration Society. Although this was an organization set up in imitation of the Council of the Shifter Emperor, compared to the formal Council of the Shifter Emperor, the Northern Restoration Society was very bloated and ugly. For example, in the 3 exposed strongholds of the Northern Restoration Society, there were no less than 7 vice presidents. And the projects they were in charge of were very complicated, from large-scale sabotage operations to small projects such as the supply of the camp. It even made people suspect that these people were just handymen with the title of vice president. After all, under Lin Yuan's management, the northern frontier was now not a solid block of iron, but people with discerning eyes could see that their lives were developing in a good direction. Even the ordinary people who did not have such a long-term vision knew that they were getting better and better treatment, higher and higher income, and more job opportunities. So not many people were willing to be enemies with the northern frontier. The people who joined the Northern Restoration Society were either descendants of aristocratic families who had been purged by Lin Yuan several times, or members of sects who had been broken up and had no hope of reorganizing. There were also members of disorderly organizations like the Demon Slayer Guild, the Mercenary Guild, and the small and medium-sized chambers of commerce scattered in the northern frontier. When the organizations behind these people were mentioned, you would feel like you had heard of them before. As for how powerful they were, you would not feel it. But without exception, these people were all the drawbacks of the old era. They were the people who had been eliminated after Lin Yuan's series of reforms. They all had cultivation. Even the weakest members used to be young masters of aristocratic families. It was obviously impossible for them to work in agriculture. Among these people, the fiercest ones were probably some of the former members of the Demon Slayer Guild. Because of Lin Yuan's appearance, their source of income was almost cut off. In reality, Lin Yuan had never made any decisions from the standpoint of the demonic beasts. It was only during the subsequent reforms that Lin Yuan was dissatisfied with the cost-performance ratio of some low-level demonic beasts. He believed that the meat of these demonic beasts was not worth the market price. Therefore, he prohibited the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce from purchasing these low-level demonic beasts. However, Lin Yuan had never placed any restrictions on the hunting of demonic beasts above the Wisdom Realm in the Hengduan mountain range. However, this move still destroyed many people's jobs. To give a simple example, the flesh of a 6th-level Spirit Awakening stage demonic beast was sold for around 300 gold coins on the market. If it was a type with a special bloodline or a mutation, the price would continue to rise. On the other hand, a 1st-level Wisdom Realm demonic beast was sold for around 1,000 gold coins to 1,200 platinum coins on the market. Although it seemed like it was much more profitable than hunting low-level demonic beasts, this was not the case. Firstly, these demon slayers were not very strong. If they were asked to hunt demonic beasts above the Wisdom Realm, it could be said that they were risking their lives in every battle. Even if they were lucky enough to win, they still had to think of a way to transport the corpse of the demonic beasts out of the Hengduan mountain range. If they had the time, they could hunt more than 10 low-level demonic beasts without any danger. Secondly, to move the hunting ground from the demonic beast forest to the Hengduan mountain range, they had to invest a lot of resources in various aspects to organize a hunt. Moreover, those who were not strong enough did not have the qualifications to travel through the Hengduan mountain range. They had to form a team of around 8 people. They had to be able to distinguish between spirit items and demonic beasts, and they had to be familiar with the terrain of the Hengduan mountain range and where the demonic beasts were located. Even the temporary campsite had to be guarded in shifts. Otherwise, the smell of blood on the demonic beasts' corpses could attract other demonic beasts. A group of soft-footed shrimps who were used to hunting sheep could not muster up the courage to hunt a lion even if they tried their best. Compared to entering the Hengduan mountain range, they were more willing to express their opposition to Lin Yuan in their own way. At least the northern frontier had laws that protected their freedom of speech. However, what they said was not life-threatening. At this moment, Yu Dingchen was mixed in with this group of demon slayers. He pretended to be as excited as the others, but in his heart he was thinking about how to spread the news. Although he did not know what the other party meant by putting out the bait. However, it was obvious that there was a big shot from the Restoration Society in Shining City right now. Therefore, the Restoration Society was going to mobilize all the spies in Shining City tonight to create an opportunity for that big shot to leave the city. That big shot is Yan Hua. Yu Dingchen's expression did not change much, but he instantly identified the big shot mentioned by the vice president. The upper echelons of the Restoration Society were most likely certain that Yan Hua had been exposed. However, in most of the cowardly and useless Restoration Society, Yan Hua's late Heaven Dipper realm cultivation was already quite strong. Therefore, it was unlikely that Yan Hua would be abandoned. Once the Restoration Society exposed a flaw in Shining City, Yan Hua would have a chance to leave the city and be taken to another place to change his appearance and disguise himself. When the time came for the Restoration Society to take action, he would still be a sharp knife that could pierce into the heart of the northern frontier. Although Yu Dingchen had a rough guess in his heart, he still could not decide what to do. Because these men in black did not belong to the 3 strongholds at all. Just like Zhang Xiuzhu speculated, they were one of the hidden forces of the Restoration Society. Yu Dingchen did not sneak in through the spy of the Restoration Society member. Instead, when he was inquiring about the news in the tavern, he heard several demon slayers who originally belonged to the Northern Frontier's Demon Slayers Guild complaining about Lin Yuan. Suddenly, he had a stroke of inspiration and went up to them to exchange a few pleasantries. He also fiercely scolded Lin Yuan's new policies. Perhaps it was the effect of the alcohol, but those demon slayers immediately took Yu Dingchen as a confidant. They even patted their chests and said that they would introduce him to some big shots. As a result, just as the sky turned dark, they received the order to assemble from the Restoration Society. They also conveniently dragged Yu Dingchen here. These people were so efficient that they were not vigilant against strangers. They directly caught Yu Dingchen off guard. He did not even have the chance to report the situation here to the upper echelons before he was directly dragged to the scene. Chapter 6:15. There were no colleagues watching them from the periphery. This meant that Yu Dingchen had to personally deliver the information to Shunning City, and he had to do it before the other party took action. Otherwise, even if the higher-ups knew that the Northern Restoration Society was going to give up some cannon fodder to cover Yanhua's retreat, it would be meaningless. Without enough manpower and high-end combat power, how could they stop a cultivator in the late stage of Heaven's Strength realm who wanted to escape? But the Northern Restoration Society was obviously not as honest as it seemed. It was only by chance that he managed to infiltrate the subordinates of a certain vice president of the Northern Restoration Society. Because he had been in the Brocade Guards Yamen for a long time, and then went to receive Yi Belan's training, not many people had seen Yu Dingchen before. Most of those who had seen him were now dead. An unfamiliar face was more than enough to play the role of a weak demon slayer or a depressed mercenary. With his own appearance and honed acting skills, he could even play the role of a young master of a family that had been exterminated. As long as he could get in touch with the Northern Restoration Society's spy, it was only a matter of time before he came into contact with the Northern Restoration Society's power. But here was the problem. At the moment, he was playing the role of a young mercenary who had reached the half-step Heaven's Strength realm. His excuse was that he came from foreign enemies some time ago and heard that the northern frontier was a paradise in troubled times, so he came all the way here to make a fortune. But he didn't make any money and was blocked by the northern frontier prince's mansion. After all, Gao Buzhan was building fortifications along the river. Except for some areas that had been built and could let ships through in batches, the rest would be attacked by the aquatic monsters once they entered the Wei River. The best result would be to jump back to the shore, and everything on the ship would be left at the bottom of the Wei River. And now the embroidered uniform guards were on high alert. Their inspection of passers-by was extremely strict. Even those who were empty-handed had to be stripped naked and undergo a series of inspections. Not many people were willing to suffer such humiliation. Even if they were willing, they might not be able to pass the inspection and be detained by the Northern Frontier Navy to await the next step of interrogation and judgment. In the eyes of the members of the Northern Restoration Society, Yu Dingchen was a like-minded person with a clean background. Just like them, Yu Dingchen had been persecuted by the Northern Frontier. In addition, Yu Dingchen's cultivation was not bad. He was immediately treated as a treasure by the vice president and was introduced to everyone present. As a result, everyone was now familiar with him. In addition, Yu Dingchen was also introduced by several members of the Northern Restoration Society. In this regard, Yu Dingchen was much luckier than his colleagues who could only rely on themselves to explore and curry favor. At least they did not doubt his identity from the beginning. Instead, they treated him as one of their own. They did not even intend to hide their plans from him. However, although he had a good start, it did not mean that he had passed the test. Tonight's action was a good opportunity for the vice president to prove Yu Dingchen's loyalty. If Yu Dingchen did not do anything unusual, he would be completely connected with the spy of the Northern Restoration Society. He could even follow them back to the headquarters of the Northern Frontier Society and see with his own eyes the leaders of the Northern Frontier, who did not even have a portrait of them, but directly put a bounty of hundreds of thousands to tens of millions on them. Tonight's action was to prove his loyalty. Once Yu Dingchen returned to Shunning City now, he would never be able to make it back before the action here. When the action started, he, as an outstanding junior who the vice president had high hopes for, would not be active on the battlefield. No matter whether he was exposed or not, the Northern Restoration Society would not accept him. So, should he choose to stop Yanhua from escaping, or should he choose to continue hiding in the Northern Restoration Society? Yu Dingchen did not have the idea of letting Yanhua go temporarily and waiting to catch him in the future. In this line of work, one must always remember to be down to earth because a little bit of arrogance could lead to one's death. The branch of the Northern Restoration Society he was in was clearly not very powerful. There were only about 100 people in total. The vice president did not show his power, but from the looks of the Mortal Evolution State members, it should be one of the peripheral organizations. With such an opening, it would be good if he could meet some of the higher-ups of the Northern Restoration Society. As for getting in touch with Yan Hua or even participating in the higher-ups gathering, it was still a very long way to go. During this time, it was hard to say when Yan Hua would choose to bite the northern frontier. Brother Fan, Brother Wang, what are you guys doing? Yu Dingxin poked the two middle-aged men next to him and asked in a low voice. Although Men Ming knew who was gathered here, the Resurrection Society had yet to reveal their true strength. As a foreign mercenary who was temporarily pulled here, if the other party did not say anything and expose that he knew about the Resurrection Society, these people around him would directly pounce on him and tear him apart alive. Brother Fan's appearance was very special. He had a long horse face with protruding ears and slender eyebrows. He looked rather strange and funny. Lower your voice. You'll know after hearing what the president has to say. Brother Fan also responded in a low voice, but he didn't look at Yu Dingxin. Instead, he stared at the vice president and said, "It doesn't matter what we do. Brother, just treat yourself as a mercenary hired by us. Cooperate with us later. After this is done, we won't mistreat you, brother." Brother Wang nodded in agreement. He smiled and said, we don't lack money. As long as you are willing to join us and prove your loyalty, I promise you that you will live a good life in the northern region. I see. Yu Dingxin let out a sigh of relief and said with a smile, then I'll wait and see. Except for some people with ulterior motives, most of the members of the Northern Restoration Society were because Lin Yuan had violated their interests. However, this did not mean that these people were really short of money. Although the income was low, it was still not a problem for them to live a good life. After all, whether it was the aristocratic families or the sects, they had been developing in the northern frontier for many years. Except for the fixed assets that could not be moved, which were taken away by Lin Yuan, a lot of money and food had been moved. In addition to their own warehouses, they had also set up numerous large and small private warehouses. The Northern Restoration Society was very confident in appointing and dismissing their vice president. Although there were many internal factions and members were mixed at the same time, it also stimulated the vice president to take out a lot of money and equipment to arm their subordinates. Therefore, the wealth in the hands of this shady faction might be much more than what was in the treasury of the northern frontier. Chapter 6:16. Some of you have been with me for a long time and some of you are new to us. So I will say a few words. Ever since the Black Jiao took over the northern frontier, our days have been getting harder and harder. Under the pressure, you brothers and sisters have united to form today's Northern Restoration Society. Our purpose is to overthrow the Black Jiao's rule and return the northern frontier to its former glory. Tonight is the night of my Northern Restoration Society's fame. Another group of brothers is planning to make a big move tonight. Our mission tonight is to cooperate with these brothers and take control of the South Gate as soon as possible after the guards in Shunning City are transferred away. Then we can meet up with our brothers who are retreating from Shunning City. We have to hold on until I give the order to retreat. Then we can gather here. Tonight, regardless of whether the mission is successful or not, everyone will be rewarded 150 taels of gold and 2 30-year-old spirit items. The vice president stood on the high platform and glanced at the faces of the people below. Although he was the vice president, it was only a title. He had to personally carry out the mission given by the higher-ups, so he had to choose a group of strong enough guards to ensure his safety. The reason he said this was to choose the right guards. Don't look timid or apathetic. These people were already old foxes. Even if they were selected, they would not put in any effort. Don't look fanatical or excited. These people were still too young. It was not a problem to count on them to fight the enemy. But if they were placed by his side as guards, they might cause big trouble. After roughly scanning the faces of the hundreds of people, the vice president quickly picked out 10 who looked indifferent and had a strong cultivation base. He then waved his hand and said in a deep voice, "Let's go." Brother Wang stretched out his hand and patted Yu Dingxin, who was standing beside him with a blank face. He chuckled and said, "Little brother, you are lucky to be selected by the president as a guard on your first mission. This is a job that others can't get even if they want it." "What do you mean?" Yu Dingxin replied with a puzzled face. Those who weren't selected as guards didn't need to stay in this camp. They had to return to Shunning City in advance and hide there. After all the guards in the city were transferred out, they would suddenly take control of the south gate of Shunning City, which was one of the 8 exits of Shunning City. It was also because of this that Yu Dingxin was even more certain that the purpose of the Restoration North Assembly was to help Yan Hua leave. Because Yan Hua lived in an inn in the south of Shunning City. but if they wanted to go to the south gate they would have to go around 2 mountains. Brother Wang laughed and said enviously, "The northern army is not that easy to deal with. We will fight the northern army at the front. You just need to follow the president. If you want to fight, you'll be the last to fight. If you want to retreat, you'll be the first to retreat. You're much safer than us." Yu Dingchen shrugged with a wry smile on his face. "Brother Wang, it's normal for this job to fall to you seniors. I'm a newcomer. If I don't put in effort on my first mission, it'll be hard to avoid gossip in the future. I want to take this opportunity to prove my strength." He would rather not have this job that others envied. After all, the president was sincerely seeking refuge with the Restoration North Assembly, while he was a spy who was pulled in for no reason. Therefore, compared to being a guard of the vice president, he would rather sneak into Shunning City like the others who weren't selected. Only then could he contact the spies of the Association of the Demon Emperor and tell them about the Restoration North Assembly's plan. But now that he was the vice president's guard, he was not as free as before. Even if he wanted to go to Shunning City, he could only move under the vice president's watch. Once he gave himself away, this line would be cut off immediately. He might even be in danger. Hearing Yu Dingchen's words, Brother Wang's face was still full of envy, but his eyes were no longer as cold as before. He patted Yu Dingchen's shoulder and said, "You brat, I brought you here. Don't forget your brother Wang when you're doing well in the future. It's your fortune to be able to catch the eye of the president. Don't think too much about it and cherish it. If someone really talks nonsense about you, Brother Wang will help you solve it." Brother Wang still has this bit of face. Envy and jealousy always made people have some evil thoughts, including Brother Wang. Maybe there was nothing to nitpick about the other 9 guards, but Yu Dingchen was given such an important task as soon as he arrived. Obviously, some of the old people were jealous. Now that Yu Dingchen was so sensible, Brother Wang couldn't find an excuse to punish him. After all, he was the one who discovered this kid. If Yu Dingchen got a high position in the Restoration North Assembly, it would be a good thing to promote him. "Well, I won't talk to you anymore. We should go. If you need anything, remember to come to me." Brother Wang said a few more words before he caught up with the rest of the team and walked towards the forest. After the team left, only the vice president and the 10 guards were left in the camp. At this time, the vice president walked to Yu Dingchen and said with a smile, "Young man, I have some serious business to talk to you about before. How should I address you?" "My surname is Yu and I'm the 7th in the family. You can call me Yu Chi." Yu Dingchen slightly lowered his head and replied in a low voice. In the eyes of the vice president, Yu Dingchen was showing respect to him. He was more and more satisfied with Yu Dingchen. Although his cultivation was not high, he was still a person who had experienced great storms and waves. His pair of eyes were especially shrewd and ruthless. This newcomer's future achievements would definitely not be limited to his subordinates. Either he would die midway or he would be able to sit in a high position in the Restoration Society. Therefore, there was definitely nothing wrong with befriending him in advance. As for those people who only had eyes for the land under his hands and only thought about fighting for power and profit all day long, no matter how he thought about it, it would be impossible for them to have any future prospects. As long as he controlled them regularly, there was no need to take them seriously. "Well, Yu Chi." The vice president stretched out his hand and stroked his beard. He said with a smile, "I heard from old Wang that you are not from the northern frontier. Why did you come to the northern frontier at this time? This place is not peaceful. That Black Jiao often finds excuses to kill people. His methods are extremely cruel. Those foolish people think that they are living a good life and think that the Black Jiao is a benevolent ruler. They take the initiative to help the Black Jiao deal with us, but they don't know that this is the Black Jiao's plan to boil the frog in warm water. If it weren't for the Restoration North Assembly, the Black Jiao would have killed those foolish people long ago." Speaking of this, the vice president paused and said with an unkind face, "That Black Jiao is a demon. How can a demon be of the same mind as a human?" Chapter 617. Yu Dingchen nodded slightly and didn't comment on the vice president's words. He just smiled bitterly and said, "I was tricked. I thought I could make a fortune in the northern region, but I didn't expect that I didn't make any money. Now I can't even leave. If it weren't for Brother Wang and the others, I might be lying in some abandoned temple or alley." Yu Dingchen bowed to the vice president and said in a deep voice, "Thank you for taking me in." The vice president wasn't a good guy, but he did have some tricks up his sleeve. Previously, when he spoke, he had scanned the faces of the crowd one by one in order to choose a suitable guard for himself. As for the reason why he chose to stay behind, it was because he heard that he was from a foreign land and was not weak, so he wanted to befriend him. Through these words, he could further erase the little good impression he had of the northern region and make him completely loyal to them. However, it wasn't hard to tell that the vice president used to be a disciple of an aristocratic family. He didn't have a high status and wasn't generous enough. What he promised Yu Dingchen on the stage wasn't a lot of money. It was the money from the Northern Frontier Association. The vice president must have kept some of the money. That was why Yu Dingchen could get such a reward. What was worse was that the vice president didn't want to give Yu Dingchen the money now. Apparently, he wanted the Northern Frontier Army to kill a bunch of people. After the mission was completed, he would return to the camp and reward those who were still alive. It would be hard for Yu Dingchen to succeed under such a superior. Yu Dingchen lowered his head and thought about the possibility of him catching the vice president suddenly and escaping from the other 9 people's encirclement. The vice president waved his hand and said indifferently, "We are all on the same side. Don't be so courteous. The Northern Frontier is blind to let a capable man like you live on the street. Wang brought you here to help us, which proves that the Northern Frontier is doomed. Yichi, work hard under me. I won't let you suffer losses." After some small talk, a guard brought a horse over. He helped the vice president get on the horse and they walked slowly to Shunning City. 5 minutes past 9. Outside Shunning City. The patrolling cavalry was nowhere to be seen. Even the patrolling Northern Battlefront Army was few and far between. Outside the window it was raining cats and dogs. However, the strange thing was that the dark clouds seemed to only cover the area around Shunning City. Once one left the city, not a single drop of rain could be seen. Even the ground was extremely dry. Suddenly, footsteps could be heard from outside. The vice president took a deep breath and held a crossbow in his hand. The door was pushed open slowly. A guard who was sent out to inquire about the news said in a low voice, "President, I have inquired about it." A group of bandits suddenly appeared outside the city. They used the banner of Shin Linjun to kill and loot around Shunning City. In just a few hours they have burned down at least a dozen villages. The Northern Battlefront Army from other settlements can't be transferred. Shunning City has to do it ourselves. Most of the troops have just set out, so the defense forces in various places are much weaker. Hearing this, the vice president let out a sigh of relief and said in a deep voice, "It should be our people. Let's order our brothers to take action as well. We must take control of the South Gate as soon as possible to ensure the smooth progress of the mission." "Well?" The guard paused and said with hesitation, "President, there are still some Northern Battlefront Army Genie Guards and the Association of Demon Kings in the city. I can't get any information from them. But I heard that there are 100,000 guards in the Northern Frontier. We only have 100 people. Can we guard the South Gate?" The vice president narrowed his eyes and glanced at the guard. His cold gaze sent chills down the guard's spine. "Use your brain before you speak. If it was a suicidal mission, would I come with you? Don't worry. We have people in the Northern Battlefront Army guarding the South Gate. And some of our brothers have also sent people here. We are not just 100 people. And I am sure that the Northern Frontier will be in a terrible situation tonight. They won't spare any energy to deal with us. You just need to do your job well. When the fight starts, you are all by my side. As long as I don't go, you don't have to risk your lives. I will call you when I leave. What's there to worry about?" Except for Yu Dingchen and another newcomer, the rest of the 10 guards were all the vice president's confidants. And now he had sent all of them out to gather information. Only one of them came back. So he didn't have to worry about what he said. "Got it?" The guard's face lit up with joy and he immediately responded. He wouldn't dare to fight with 100 people against 100,000 people. But if the higher-ups of the Northern Reversion Society had other arrangements, then it wouldn't be a problem. At this time the rest of the guards, including Yu Dingchen, had all returned to the inn. Behind Yu Dingchen were over 100 members of the Northern Reversion Society who had been hiding in Shunning City. They had all changed into gray gowns. Black cloth was wrapped around their left arms. They were carrying all kinds of weapons. A ferocious aura came from them. The vice president nodded with satisfaction. Then he waved his hand gently and said in a deep voice, "Let's go." The group of people walked out of the inn. The vice president opened a yellow oil paper umbrella and muttered impatiently, "Why is this damned rain not stopping?" Yu Dingchen stepped into a puddle. The expression on his face was completely different from the people around him. There was no fear or solemnity. His face was as calm as an ancient well. He lowered his head and hurried on. At the corner of the street, a black shadow flashed and disappeared. Then, it strangely exploded and turned into a pool of black liquid that flowed along the ground. Fortunately, it was dark now, so they couldn't see the color of the rain on the ground clearly even with torches. However, if it was daytime, they could clearly see that the streets and the ground of Shining City were covered with black puddles of different sizes. The puddles were constantly wriggling as if they were alive. Suddenly, a pale hand reached out from the black puddle and grabbed the ankle of the person at the end of the line. He didn't even have a chance to scream before he was dragged into the black puddle. A cultivator who suddenly felt a gust of wind behind him turned around. But he didn't see anything. He mumbled a few words and then continued to walk forward in the rain. Only after taking 2 steps did this cultivator turn his head with a terrified expression. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but he just happened to see a pale white hand reach out from the curtain of rain in front of him, grabbing his throat and dragging him into the curtain of rain. Chapter 6:18. The massacre was carried out silently. The group of over 100 people was getting smaller and smaller. The vice president at the front of the team turned his head. He seemed to want to say something to boost the morale of the team, but he was suddenly at a loss for words. He swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth, and his eyes were filled with fear. At this moment, there were less than 30 cultivators following behind him. When he turned his head, he saw a pale hand reaching out and covering the mouth of the person at the back of the group. The hand pulled the person back forcefully, and the person disappeared into the rain. Rain. There's something wrong with the rain. Find a place to hide from the rain. The vice president's hair stood on end. He cried out in alarm and quickly rushed to a nearby house. The vice president was the only one who saw the white hand grabbing the person. His sudden roar didn't catch many people's attention. Almost everyone subconsciously froze in place for a moment. The pale white hand hidden in the curtain of rain seemed to have been provoked by something. It no longer continued to hide the fact that it was grabbing the person. In the blink of an eye, dozens of pale white hands reached out from the curtain of rain. Yu Dingchen was targeted by 3 palms at the same time, but he was not in a hurry. He took out a black token and hung it on his waist. The 3 palms were stunned when they saw the token. They continued to pounce on Yu Dingchen, but intentionally or unintentionally, they left an opening for Yu Dingchen to break out of the encirclement. Yu Dingchen also quickly rolled out of the encirclement of the 3 pale white hands and rushed into the house that the vice president had smashed open. At this moment, the killing on the street stopped abruptly. Except for a few lucky and fast-reacting members, everyone else was pulled into the rain and disappeared into thin air. I knew it. I knew it. There's something wrong with the rain. The vice president shrank into a corner. He seemed to be mentally stimulated and kept muttering to himself. Yu Dingchen swallowed dryly. He quietly put away the token and quickly walked to the vice president. He said in a low voice, "President, most of the brothers we brought are dead. What should we do next?" Their mission was to control the south gate and prepare an escape route for Yanhua. However, now that something like this had happened, it would be a miracle if they could even leave this place alive, let alone control the south gate. Hearing Yu Dingchen's words, the vice president seemed to come back to his senses and stared at Yu Dingchen in a daze. After a while, he lowered his head helplessly and said bitterly, "What else can we do? This strange heavy rain won't stop. Even if we go out, we won't be able to escape death. Let's hide here first. When the rain stops, we'll leave." Now, we can only hope that the brothers at the northern frontier won't have any problems. Otherwise, when the guards of the imperial residence come out in full force, we won't be able to escape even if we have wings. He was scared out of his wits. At first, they thought that the northern frontier was just SOSO. At worst, they would have to fight. With the power of the Northern Frontier Association, they were not necessarily afraid of the armed forces of Shining City. However, the strange heavy rain instantly extinguished his ambition and arrogance. They didn't even see the people at the northern frontier, and all the brothers he brought had been wiped out. If he hadn't turned back to say something to boost their morale, he might have also been killed. Continue to be the enemy of the northern frontier? He didn't have the guts to do that. Yu Dingchen's face changed several times. He suddenly pulled out the steel sword in his hand and took 2 steps forward with a cold face. What are you doing?" The vice president seemed to be frightened by Yu Dingchen. He said sternly, "Yu Qi, even if you want to kill me, you can't take my head to the imperial residence at the northern frontier to exchange for reward money. That Black Jiao would rather kill the wrong person than let the wrong person go. You are with the Northern Frontier Association today. No matter what your purpose is, he will never let you go. And if you kill me, the Northern Frontier Association will not let you go either. Yu Dingchen looked at the vice president and then looked at the steel sword in his hand. He said helplessly, "President, you misunderstood me. If you didn't take me in, I wouldn't have been able to escape the evil rain tonight. You saved my life. How can I repay kindness with enmity? I'll go upstairs to see if there are other people in the house in case they see us. Tomorrow, I'll go to the imperial residence at the northern frontier to report." On the other side, Lin Yuan and Li Zhongxing stood side by side. Li Zhongxing narrowed his eyes slightly and said with a smile, "This kid is quite smart. Even at this time, he is still following the leader of the Northern Restoration Society. It seems that he is aware of our intentions." Lin Yuan crossed his arms in front of his chest. He didn't respond to Li Zhongxing. He just waved his hand and called the black puddles back to him. He opened his mouth and swallowed a large amount of the underworld black water. He closed his mouth after swallowing about 60% of it. The rest of the black water turned into human-shaped monsters under his cold gaze. They stood in front of him in different postures. "Let's go," Lin Yuan said expressionlessly. He waved his black sleeve and disappeared on the other side of the street with Li Zhongxing. Shunning City was very busy tonight. Other than a few patrolling Northern Army soldiers, cultivators could be seen everywhere. This troop of more than 100 people was a weak force in the Northern Frontier Association, but it was the first group to be dealt with. Even Lin Yuan and Li Zhongxing came in person to make sure the plan was foolproof. The 3 strongholds that were targeted by Yan Hua had all become bandits that burned, killed, and plundered tonight. They were of no value. Obviously, they had been abandoned by the Restoration Society. Even Yan Hua, who had been under surveillance in Shunning City, accurately found the spies lurking around him and killed them. Then he disappeared into the night and disappeared without a trace. Therefore, Yu Dingchen had now become the only spy who had locked onto the Northern Restoration Society. The Northern Restoration Society was almost wiped out, and it would be impossible for them to stir up trouble in a short period of time. Moreover, as long as the leader was still alive in Shunning City, he would definitely recruit more people to make a comeback. At that time, Yu Dingchen, who was by his side, would be the new leader, and he would be able to absorb a large number of spies into the Northern Restoration Society until he completely figured out where the viper lurking in the dark was. Perhaps the upper echelons of the Northern Restoration Society would never have thought that they could have given up on Yan Hua and the other 3 strongholds and let the Northern Restoration Society go into hiding. However, because of Yan Hua's escape, the other poisonous tooth of the Northern Territory had pierced into their bodies. If there was such a thing as fate, it wouldn't be the turn of a bunch of rebels who imitated the Demon Emperor Association. The plot was about to end. Lin Yuan was going to enter the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas. The plot wouldn't be boring anymore. Look forward to it. Chapter 619. The next day in the early morning, the whole Shunning City was filled with the pungent smell of blood. The 3,000 Northern Battlefront Army that stayed in Shunning City last night were almost wiped out. 100,000 guards of the prince's mansion were disabled, and less than 40,000 soldiers were left. The Northern Region Restoration Society had paid an even heavier price. Nearly 80,000 cultivators had died in Shunning City. Many of their spies and strongholds had been seized by the Northern Region Lord's mansion. Even some of the strongholds outside the city had been found out. Even without the loss of all kinds of materials, the Northern Region Restoration Society had suffered a great loss. And all of this was just for Yan Hua. Luo Su stretched out his hand and rubbed his temples. His expression was uncertain as he murmured, "It seems that we thought too simply before. This Yan Hua is definitely not as simple as he looks on the surface. Someone behind him is very likely to be the president of the Restoration Society. Moreover, the relationship between the two should be something like father and son or master and disciple. This is the negligence of your brocade guard." Yi Bilan looked at Luo Su coldly and said, "If you didn't transfer my men away, Yan Hua wouldn't have been able to leave. You have to take full responsibility for this." Luo Su stared back at him and growled, "Why didn't I transfer your men away? You just wanted to go back to the border and try to provoke us to fight with the 3 strongholds. You didn't see the big picture at all. If I didn't transfer your men away, Yan Hua would have died without knowing why. How could I explain it to the Dragon King then? See the big picture? See the big picture. You dragged us all here." Yi Bilan overturned the table beside him. His eyes were bloodshot and he breathed heavily. He had applied for a full-scale war with the 3 strongholds, and before the Northern Restoration Society reacted, they would get rid of the tumor. But last night, all the members of the Northern Restoration Society in the 3 strongholds turned into bandits. Even the spies hiding in the strongholds didn't have time to send back the news, which made the Northern Restoration Society extremely passive. They even had to transfer a lot of forces to quell the rebellion, which made the defense of Shunning City empty yesterday, and let the Northern Restoration Society take advantage of the loophole. But now it was all right. Shunning City had killed many rebels of the Northern Restoration Society in the battle yesterday, but they had also suffered heavy losses. On their side, except for the rebels in the 3 strongholds, they didn't gain anything at all. They didn't even get any decent information from torture. Not only did they embarrass themselves, even Bai Yi and the embroidered uniform guard's abilities were being questioned. For the time being, he could forget about returning to the borders to manage unremitting night. The spies he had set up in the Frost Mirror Grassland and the Azure River Empire had all been abandoned. Who knew how much effort he would have to put in to rebuild them? Gentlemen, there's no need to quarrel. Zhang Xiuzhu, who had changed into a dark green windbreaker, pushed open the door and walked into the temporary meeting room. His black and white eyes flashed. You too. Yi Bilan watched his capable subordinate change his clothes, and the anger on his face gradually turned into confusion. Let me introduce myself. I am the director of MI7, Zhang Xiuzhu. Zhang Xiuzhu flicked his dark green windbreaker and then pulled a chair to sit down. He then said in a deep voice, the unforeseen event in Shunning City last night was indeed not small, but it's not like we didn't gain anything at all. Yu Dingchen, the deputy director of MI7, infiltrated a small organization under the Northern Restoration Society last night. He is expected to leave Shunning City in 15 minutes. I hope you two can let him go. They didn't have time to digest how Zhang Xiuzhu had suddenly become the director of MI7, but his words made their eyes light up at the same time. The Northern Restoration Society was still under their supervision. According to the next plan, Director Yi can also take Yi Busho back to the border. All the work of the Northern Restoration Society will no longer have anything to do with Yi Busho. As long as Director Yi organizes the corresponding information and sends it to the Demon Emperors Association before leaving, Commander Luo and I will take care of the rest. And Commander Luo, by the order of Dragon King, from today on, the Brocade Guard will be fully under the command of MI7. Commander Luo's official position will remain unchanged, but the opinion of MI7 will be the first priority for all matters related to the Northern Restoration Society. Zhang Xiuzhu cupped his fists at the 2 men, his expression still calm. He didn't have the mentality of being able to stand side by side with Yi Bilan and Luo Su, and he wasn't naive enough to think that he could be their superior. It was only because of Yu Dingchen's unexpected gain in dealing with the Northern Restoration Society that he had a head start. In the face of the 2 veteran spy chiefs, Zhang Xiuzhu still held a considerable amount of reverence. I'll give the order. Yi Bilan's face lit up. He immediately responded, then got up and left the conference room. He didn't have too many concerns. After all, the nature of his Yi Busho was completely different from that of the Brocade Guard. Compared to an intelligence agency that could become a general, Yi Busho was originally one of the military's fighting forces. It was just that they rarely confronted each other on the battlefield. He had never regarded himself as a spy chief, nor did he want to compete with Luo Su for power and profit, following Sherdong's old path. For the current him, as long as he could leave Shunning City and return to the battlefield he was familiar with, it would be the best thing. Zhang Xiuzhu pondered for a moment. Looking at Luo Su's scrutinizing eyes, he chuckled and said, Commander Luo, you don't have to look at me like that. I won't be Sherdong's successor, and I have no intention of arm wrestling with Commander Luo. MI7 is indeed a newly established spy agency, but our eyes are mainly focused on the military. Except for the Northern Restoration Society, we have almost no overlap. Luo Su snorted coldly. Although he didn't say anything, his eyes were kind. He wasn't someone who didn't know what was good for him, and he didn't expect to be able to control the entire management of the northern region. The emergence of MI7 would undoubtedly cut off all the tentacles of the Imperial Secret Service that had infiltrated the military. However, without Sherdong as a stumbling block, his power in the northern region would not be inferior to that of Li Zhongxing, the king of the northern region. That was enough. I'll inform the Brocade Guard guarding the entrance of Shunning City. Luo Su nodded slightly and stepped out of the conference room. He didn't want to communicate with Zhang Xiuzhu. After all, Yu Dingchen used to be a member of the Genie Guards. Most of the guards knew this Chinhu who used to be in charge of punishment in the yamen. Therefore he only needed to greet him. There was no need for him to keep watch at the entrance of Shunning City. Moreover, now was not the time to shed all pretense of cordiality. After all, the further tracking of the Northern Restoration Society was in the hands of Zhang Xiuzhu. If Yu Dingchen wanted to kick him out, there was no reason for him to make things difficult for himself. Chapter 620. Northern Frontier King's Mansion, Back Courtyard. Li Zhong and Lin Yuan sat facing each other, staring at the chessboard in front of them. A black piece fell from Lin Yuan's fingertips, and the situation once again fell into a disadvantage. Li Zhong smiled helplessly and decisively admitted defeat. He smiled bitterly and said, "There is no need to struggle. The dragon has been cut down and there are not many pieces left. There is no point in continuing this game other than wasting time. I have lost." Lin Yuan, who was sitting in front of him, nodded slightly and said meaningfully, "You can decisively admit defeat, but some people do not seem to understand this and insist on wasting time with this king. Say, how long do you think he can live?" "It is hard to say. This guy hides too well." Li Zhong shook his head lightly and said helplessly, "However, the Northern Restoration Society suffered great losses in last night's bloody battle. They will not cause any more trouble in the short term. However, I feel that there are many strange things behind this matter. It seems, the Northern Restoration Society's power has only revealed the tip of the iceberg." Lin Yuan was silent. He stared at Li Zhong, waiting for him to continue. "But the strange thing is, if the Northern Restoration Society has such great power and intends to overthrow our rule on the northern frontier, they will not reveal their existence at this time. Once the Sky Demon Corps completely destroys the army of the Shenwu dynasty and then places troops on the Wei River, most of our forces will be transferred over. That will be the time when our rear is at its weakest. If the Northern Restoration Society chooses to act at that time, our foundation will be instantly destroyed. So, what is the point of sacrificing so many members of the Northern Restoration Society for Yanhua? I cannot guess whether the upper echelons of the Northern Restoration Society have changed their strategy and plan to give up on the low-level members and walk the path of elites. They want to hide in the northern frontier in a way that is not easily detected. Or does Yanhua have some unknown secret that can make the upper echelons of the Northern Restoration Society make such a risky decision?" Li Zhong sighed faintly. All those who were good at strategizing did not care about how their opponents looked at the big picture and how well they planned. The only opponents they were worried about were two kinds of people. One was the unconstrained genius, and the other was the boorish man who acted without thinking. In essence, the two were the same, but the former's rash actions were always for a reason, while the latter's gains and losses were all due to the accident of their rash actions. We will know what Fu Bei is thinking in the future. Lin Yuan threw the black pieces into the box one by one. His face was expressionless as he said indifferently, "In any case, Fu Bei Union won't be able to make any big moves in a short period of time. You should keep an eye on them first. After a while, I will go south to the Endless Sea." Ao Qian of the Western Sea Dragon Palace was still waiting at the northern frontier. She urged Lin Yuan to go to the Endless Sea more and more frequently. Apparently, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was losing patience with Lin Yuan, who refused to go to the Endless Sea. 2 months was already the limit that Lin Yuan could buy. After all, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was extremely cooperative in the matter of welcoming the cultists to the south of the Shenwu dynasty, including the follow-up series of cleanup work, which required the cooperation of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. If they were really annoyed, not only would the problem of the cultists not be solved, even the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would become Lin Yuan's next opponent. Even if he could give up the route to the Endless Sea, with the help of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, the south would not be peaceful, and the next step of his plan would be difficult. At that time, the whole strategic plan would have to be changed, which would be very troublesome. Go to the Endless Sea? But aren't you? Li Zhong was slightly startled. Apparently he did not expect Lin Yuan's plan to be like this. This puppet body was only controlled by his spiritual sense. Not to mention whether Lin Yuan's spiritual sense could extend from the Hengduan Mountains to the Endless Sea, it would undoubtedly be a provocation and disrespect to meet those dragon bloodline demonic beasts with the current appearance of the puppet body. Naturally, I have my ways. Lin Yuan gently waved his hand. The puppet's pitch-black eyes dimmed, and it suddenly opened its mouth. The nether realm black water stored in its hollow body rushed out, forming black humanoid monsters in the courtyard. Only then did he say in a deep voice, "These nether realm servants that I have refined are all immortal existences. If there are any changes in the northern frontier when I'm not around, you can command them to take action." At this point, Li Zhong's eyes were already filled with excitement. How terrifying was an immortal army! The Sky Demon, who was known to be immortal and indestructible, had already made the entire Tianwu continent helpless. On the other hand, the Sky Demon's side did not have a physical body. When it existed in the world as a spiritual body, it was very difficult for it to cause any harm to other living beings. However, it still relied on its terrifying ability to penetrate through every opening to defeat the elite troops of the Xinwu dynasty. Lin Yuan's nether realm servants were also immortal and indestructible. Furthermore, they did not have any cooldown time. If they were scattered on the spot, they would be reborn on the spot. If one did not think things through and directly attacked the black liquid, they would be instantly pulled in and quickly assimilated into something similar to the nether realm servants. However, not only are these things not tolerated by the heavens and the earth, they will also cause the top powers to be fearful. After all, the Sky Demon's chaos has already left them in a terrible fix. If they know that I have created something even more terrifying than the Sky Demon, they will definitely not allow the northern frontier to grow. Thus, if I can avoid using them, then I will not use them. After all, if the effects of some cards being played first are too good, it will only cause other gamblers to flip the table. Lin Yuan's pitch-black eyes flickered. He mercilessly used cold water to extinguish the flames in Li Zhong's heart. With the support of the heavens, the growth of the northern frontier far exceeded everyone's expectations. Heavenly Dipper realm experts that were rarely seen in other places were as common as dogs in the northern frontier. Over the past 2 months, Li Zhong, Jiu Jinshan, Qin Guanshan, and other veteran experts of the past had all broken through to the void realm or come in contact with that threshold. In terms of strength, they were not weaker than any of the empires. However, compared to the top powers that were above the empires, they were still in their infancy and could be destroyed at any time. All of them keep saying that they will unite all their forces to protect the Tianwu continent, but they can't bear to see us grow? Li Zhong raised his eyebrows and a look of resentment flashed in his eyes. That is what they say and that is what they do. Lin Yuan sneered and said in a cold voice, "Unfortunately, their so-called unity refers to existences that can grow to a similar level as them. People like us who are destined to surpass them might be a greater threat than the things on the other side of the heavenly gates. After all, they have been high and mighty for so many years. How could they tolerate the day when they bow and scrape to us?" Chapter 621. Well said. A loud and clear voice sounded. Immediately after, Lei Qiuxing, who was wearing a long black robe, strode into the courtyard. Seeing that Lin Yuan and Li Zhong's gazes had landed on him at the same time, Lei Qiuxing shook his black robe and sneered. Those old things just can't bear to see others have the chance to step on their heads. No matter who has the slightest hint of this, they will immediately extinguish it. Some of the ancient forces that had disappeared in the long river of history were because of the existence on the other side of the heavenly gates, but more of it was because of the knives that these so-called allies had handed over behind their backs. Like those aristocratic families, the long period of rule had caused them to forget most of their common sense. They believed that they should be superior to most people since they were born. This was very clear from the fact that the various top forces had ordered the emperors of the various empires to not allow them to break through to the Heaven Star border realm. Those who were truly talented would also be secretly absorbed into their own camps. This stance clearly meant that they planned to enslave the entire Tianwu continent forever. A foreign species like Lin Yuan, who had suddenly risen, was undoubtedly a thorn in the side and a thorn in the flesh in the eyes of those top forces. However, Lin Yuan's casual lie of retreating was dramatically related to an ancient force that had disappeared in the long river of time. In addition, with the help of the system, Lin Yuan had created various strange phenomena, and his soul had come from a world outside the Sea of Misery. This also made those top forces firmly believe that Lin Yuan was indeed the reincarnation of an ancient demon god. If not for this tiger skin hanging on his body, what awaited Lin Yuan would definitely be inexplicable suppression and extinction. Although those top forces were still considered friendly to Lin Yuan, that was only because they did not know how many existences from the so-called ancient demon court were behind Lin Yuan. Whether it was the Frost Mirror Barbarian entering the north or the Sky Demon Chaos being handed over to Lin Yuan to handle, they were all tests that the top forces were testing Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan could still handle everything with ease and could suppress the ambitions of those top forces. If Lin Yuan was unable to hold on or showed signs of fatigue, then that would be the time for the top forces to swarm over and devour Lin Yuan and the northern frontier. What are you doing here? Lin Yuan glanced at Lei Qiusheng. His heart skipped a beat, but he did not reveal the slightest bit of joy. Lei Qiusheng, who had benefited from the benefits, would not give up the opportunity to continue trading with Lin Yuan. Furthermore, he had used up all his stock, so it was impossible for him to obtain anything good to continue trading with Lin Yuan in a short period of time. The only things left that could be traded were the illusory things that Lin Yuan had mentioned before. After seeing the miracle that Lin Yuan had brought about, Lei Qiusheng naturally would not be unmoved. Trade, my god. Lei Qiusheng's expression turned solemn as he respectfully bowed to Lin Yuan. The corners of Li Zhong's eyes twitched, but he still tactfully got up and greeted Lin Yuan before hurriedly leaving. Lin Yuan had many secrets on him. When he revealed them, those who knew the secrets would be able to ponder what benefits they would bring to themselves. However, when Lin Yuan was unwilling to reveal them, those who probed into those secrets would only bring endless calamity to themselves. For example, among the netherworld servants that he had just taught, there were many existences with extremely familiar facial features. Tap, tap, tap. Lin Yuan's fingertips lightly tapped on the chessboard beside him. As if there was a strange magical power, even Lei Qiusheng's heartbeat began to match the rhythm of Lin Yuan's tapping. The chessboard clanged to the same frequency as a large amount of blood gushed to his head, causing Lei Qiusheng's face to turn red. When Lei Qiusheng almost couldn't hold on any longer, Lin Yuan's movements came to an abrupt halt. He smiled and said, "It seems like our emperor has gathered another batch of decent treasures?" Standing in front of Lin Yuan, Lei Qiusheng was like a drowning person who had just been fished out of the water, greedily gasping for air. His black robes were already soaked in sweat. Although the redness on his face had begun to subside, his chapped lips and rough skin still proved that Lei Qiusheng was beginning to dehydrate. This was a small punishment. When Lin Yuan was having a private conversation with someone, unless there was something particularly important, no one was allowed to barge in, much less interrupt. The first time was a small punishment, and the second time, Lin Yuan would refine him into a netherworld servant. This was an unspoken rule of the northern frontier. There were those who were willing to abide by it, and those who did not take it seriously. Most of those who did not take it seriously had been handed over to Li Zhong by Lin Yuan, hidden away as a trump card for the northern frontier. Dragon King must be joking. Lei Qiusheng wiped the sweat from his face. His gang chi surged, drying his robes. He smiled bitterly and said, "For the past 2 months, I've been doing my best to hunt down the remnants of the northern society. The spoils of war have also been sent to the Ministry of Works by the embroidered uniform guards, so how could I have the opportunity to search for treasures? But I came this time because the Dragon King said last time that fate can also be used to trade?" Lin Yuan let out a long nasal sound and said with a mocking gaze, "Fate can indeed be used to trade, but I don't recommend your majesty to do such a thing. You should know that a person's fate can be changed, but it must be fixed. Every action is accumulating or consuming fate. If your fate is exhausted, even if you are a cultivator, you may choke to death after drinking cold water." In the examples given by the system, there were idiots who used their own fate to trade. There were many examples of people choking to death after drinking cold water. Even if one's cultivation was profound and one could not eat or drink after entering the fasting period, it was useless. To give a simple example, in a technological world similar to Lin Yuan's previous life, there was a cultivator hiding in the mountains and rivers in seclusion. Suddenly, a nuclear bomb exploded in the seclusion grounds of a weapon test, causing the cultivator's body and soul to be destroyed. Lei Qiusheng was silent for a moment, because at the beginning he was indeed prepared to use his own fate to trade. But this kind of thing where one's cultivation level kept rising by just moving one's mouth was like Pandora's box. Once it was opened, it could not be closed. Even a person like Lei Qiusheng dared not say that he could control his greed and trade to the perfect state. "What I want to trade is not my own fate, but the fate of the Shenwu dynasty." Lei Qiusheng swallowed dryly, and a trace of hesitation flashed across his face. But when the words reached his mouth, they were naturally spat out by him. Today the Shenwu dynasty existed in name only. Whether it was Lei Qiuming in the south, Lin Yuan in the northern frontier, or the Sky Demon in the central plains, none of them would allow Lei Qiusheng to rise again. Even if he was alive, he could not be the high and mighty monarch. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.